Sleep matters. The soul that isn't yours. Imagine waking up in a body that feels familiar, but none of your thoughts feel like your own. The face in the mirror reflects your usual expression. The hands respond when you move them. The voice sounds just like yours, but the silence inside is deafening. Something essential is missing. Something ancient. Something that once whispered that you were real. This is the question that haunts this experiment. What if your consciousness is intact, but your soul has been replaced? What if the essence of you, the part that makes your choices yours, has quietly been taken from you and replaced by something else? In most philosophical discussions, we tend to assume the soul is either metaphorical or religious. But in this experiment, we treat it like a variable. What happens when the container stays the same, but the contents are swapped? Think of yourself as a vessel, not just a brain, not just a set of habits or memories, but a deeper layer, something that binds everything into a cohesive identity. If that is quietly removed and another is inserted, how would you know? Picture a child raised in total isolation, no language, no touch, no names, just sustained existence. When this child eventually meets the world, are they the same as someone who was named, loved, taught, and held? The body may be the same. The brain might still function, but what fills the silence inside them? What drives their decisions? Is that difference not the soul? Now imagine a future where technology can back up your brain like a file. They extract every thought, every memory, every dream, and load it into a clone of you. Everyone says the clone is you. It walks like you. It thinks like you. It remembers your childhood, your fears, your voice. But something inside it feels wrong. You are still here, watching it live your life. It has your soul's data, but not the soul itself. What then is the difference? Some philosophers argue that identity is memory, but others argue identity is something prior to memory. Memory can be rewritten, and has been, in many studies. False memories are easy to plant, so if your memories can be changed, and you are still you, what anchors you? What if it is not memory or behavior or body? What if it is something unmeasurable? Something that can be removed without your permission? Let us go deeper. Imagine you are put into a machine that swaps souls, not bodies, not brains, just the invisible current that flows within. You step out of the machine. Everything about you is unchanged on the outside, but inside, you feel alien. The things that once comforted you now disturb you. The foods you loved now taste like sand. Your favorite song feels like a lie. People around you do not notice. But, you are not you. And yet you are expected to live this life. Smile at this lover. Pretend to feel what you do not. This thought experiment raises a terrifying possibility. If we cannot detect when our soul is replaced, then what does it mean to be authentic? How much of who we are depends on continuity? And how fragile is that continuity, really? Now, shift perspectives. Imagine you are the one who receives someone else's soul. You feel drawn to things you never liked before. You speak in rhythms you never used. You find yourself staring at the stars and crying for reasons you cannot name. The memories are yours, but the emotions attached to them are not. Are you obligated to keep living the old life? Or does the soul that now occupies you deserve a new one? This flips our moral compass on its head. We often say people can change. But what if the change is not gradual growth, but a complete internal shift? A person who once was cruel now becomes kind. A selfish one becomes selfless. We celebrate the transformation. But if the soul changed, then perhaps the person truly died, and someone else now walks in their skin. This brings us to a darker angle. If your soul can be taken, then who has the power to take it? Is there an intelligence behind it, or is it random? Could trauma rip it from you? Could love invite a new one in? Could loneliness make your soul leave voluntarily? And if it does, what remains? a shell that smiles, a body that works, but an emptiness that no one else sees. Think about your life, every choice you have made, every mistake you regret, every small act of kindness, every cruel word. If your soul were removed from the equation and someone else lived your life exactly the same way, would it still be you? Or does the intention behind each moment matter more than the outcome? This experiment cannot be measured. It cannot be proven or disproven. But it opens a haunting door. If the soul exists, and if it can be removed, stolen, or replaced, then our understanding of identity collapses. You are not your face. You are not your history. You are not even your thoughts. You are the thing behind them. And if that thing is not permanent, then neither are you. Now sleep with that, or try to. The choice made before you were born. Imagine waking up in a room you have never seen before. Everything is already set up. Your clothes are hanging neatly. Your favorite music is playing softly in the background. A schedule is waiting for you on the table. And as you walk outside, people greet you with familiarity, expecting you to act a certain way, believe certain things, and follow certain paths. You look around and realize this life has been prepared long before you arrived in it. Every part of it feels like a script written in advance. But here is the unsettling question. Did you really choose any of this? Before you learned to speak, before you knew your name, choices were being made for you. The language you would speak, the people you would trust, the food you would find comforting, the rules you would follow, even the idea of right and wrong. All of this was handed to you without your consent. And yet, you wear them every day as if they belong to you. You say, "This is who I am." But who would you be if those choices had been different? Think about this. You did not choose your parents. You did not choose your body, your country, your religion, or the stories you would hear as a child. And these are not small things. These are the foundations of how you see the world. They shape what you fear, what you admire, what you think is possible, and what you silently avoid. So the idea that we are free to choose our lives starts to fall apart the more we look back. Because the starting point was never yours. Imagine a book already half written by the time you begin to read it. You flip through the first pages and try to make sense of the story. But the characters have already been introduced. The tone has been set. The direction is already leaning toward a particular ending. You can still make choices within the story, but the frame has been fixed. You are trying to find your freedom inside someone else's structure, and most people never question who built it. Every decision you think you made freely might have been guided by a deeper current. You liked that song because it reminded you of a memory you never chose. You took that job because it aligned with what your parents praised. You avoided conflict because you were taught that silence keeps the peace. These decisions feel like yours. But if you follow the trail backward, they came from places you did not control. And this goes deeper. Even your personality might be a reflection of survival. Maybe you learned to be funny to avoid being hurt. Maybe you became responsible because chaos scared you as a child. Maybe your confidence is really just a wall built on past rejection. What you call your identity could be a long echo of old experiences that were never your choice. And yet, here you are, carrying them like a badge. Now think about belief. Most people defend their views with passion, as if they arrived at them through deep thinking. But most beliefs are inherited, not discovered. If you were born in a different house, a different town, a different country, you would probably believe different things. And if that is true, how much of what you believe now is actually yours? The danger is not that these early choices exist. The danger is that we forget they were made for us. When you forget that, you begin to confuse conditioning with truth. You confuse familiarity with rightness. And suddenly, you live in a mental cage, thinking it is freedom. You wake up every day walking a path that someone else paved, all while thinking you are choosing it. But there is something quiet and powerful about seeing this clearly. When you realize that much of who you are was chosen before you had the chance to choose, something changes. You stop reacting. You start observing. You begin to ask questions. Why do I believe this? Why do I fear that? Why do I chase this goal and not that one? And in asking, you create space. Space to pause. Space to rewrite. Space to actually choose for the first time. This awareness is not comfortable. It might make you feel like a puppet at first, like everything is scripted and nothing is yours. But that is only half the picture. The moment you see the strings, you are no longer bound by them. You can learn to cut them one by one, not with force, but with attention, with honesty, with curiosity. You can begin to choose your thoughts. You can reframe your memories. You can stop living by rules that no longer make sense. You can let go of values that were never aligned with you. And you can build a life that feels like your own, not just one that was passed down. But this requires patience. It requires sitting in silence, watching your patterns, noticing when you speak out of habit instead of truth, noticing when your reaction is a ghost from the past. And most of all, it means accepting that some parts of you were never real. They were just armor, just noise, just echoes of choices made before you were born. You are not broken for carrying them. You are human. You did not ask for them, but now you have the chance to understand them. And in that understanding, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to be someone. You start becoming aware. And in that awareness, you find a strange kind of freedom, not loud, not dramatic, but deep and steady. The kind of freedom that comes not from running away, but from finally knowing where you stand. So ask yourself gently, what part of me was chosen before I knew how to choose? And what would happen if I questioned it? Would I lose myself? Or would I finally find something real underneath it all? Because maybe the truest choice you can ever make is the one that wakes you up from all the others. The choice to see. The choice to unlearn. The choice to become the author of a story that has always been waiting for your voice. The mirror that forgets you. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that never remembers your face. You look into it, expecting to find yourself, but what looks back is someone you do not know. There is no recognition, no connection, only a blank gaze that floats over your features like a stranger passing you in a crowd. Each time you return, the reflection is new. You tilt your head, it tilts back, but it never carries the memory of who you were yesterday. Now ask yourself this. What if that mirror is not just glass? What if it is the world? And what if it is you? We grow up thinking the mirror holds truth, that what we see in it is a reliable picture of ourselves. But what if the mirror forgets, not just occasionally, but constantly? What if it has no memory of what it reflected the day before? It simply shows the moment and nothing else. That might sound harmless until you realize how much of your identity is tied to what you believe you have always been. You wake up and call yourself by name. You move through the world with a sense of self, assuming that this self is anchored in something stable. But maybe the only thing that feels stable is the echo of yesterday's reflection. And if the mirror forgets you, maybe the echo is a lie. Now, imagine a person named Kieran. Every day, Kieran checks the mirror before leaving for work. Straightens the collar, adjusts the hair, makes sure everything is in place. But one morning, something feels off. The eyes in the mirror seem unfamiliar, not in a dramatic horror movie way. Just slightly different, like the soul behind them is quieter, dimmer, or maybe watching from farther away. Kieran blinks, shakes it off, and moves on. But the feeling lingers. Day after day, the face in the mirror seems to shift, subtly, almost like the mirror is reflecting someone who resembles Kieran but is not quite them. This disconnection starts to leak into real life. People begin saying things like, "You have changed," or "You are not like you used to be." At first, it feels like a compliment, growth maybe, but then it feels like confusion. Even Kieran cannot answer the question, "Who am I becoming?" Because the person in the mirror is not providing answers, Just a blank face that moves when Chiron moves, but never says, "Yes, this is still you." What if this is not fiction? What if the way you see yourself is entirely based on a mirror that cannot remember? Every morning, you wake up and try to reassemble who you are based on old photographs, stories people tell you, the reactions you get. But these are just reflections too. Feedback loops that form an identity, not from something internal, but from repeated recognition. Strip away that repetition and you may find that your sense of self is as fragile as breath on a glass pane. Now take a moment and go deeper. What happens to someone who relies on memory to know who they are, but whose memory is slippery? Think of people with amnesia. They forget names, places, even faces. But the most unsettling part is not that they forget others. It is that they forget themselves. Not just facts about their past, but the emotional signature of being someone. That internal feeling that says, "This is me." Without that feeling, a person can look at their reflection and see nothing but a face. No connection, just a biological mask. This happens in quieter ways to all of us. Every time we abandon a version of ourselves, we are allowing the mirror to forget. That version vanishes like a vapor, and what replaces it is a new image that we quickly adjust to. Over time, this becomes normal. Until one day we look at a picture of ourselves from years ago and feel like we are looking at a stranger. And in a way we are. Now pause and ask, if the mirror forgets, and we also forget, then what exactly is holding our identity together? Is it habits? Is it memories? Is it how others treat us? Or is it something deeper that we cannot name? Maybe what holds us is not a single thread, but a constant stitching. Each morning we sew ourselves back into the fabric of who we think we are, and each night a little piece unravels. The next day we repair it again. It is not a solid structure. It is a ritual, a quiet, persistent ritual of becoming. There is something both terrifying and liberating about this. Terrifying because it means there may be no permanent self, no fixed person hidden behind your thoughts. But it is also freeing because it means you are not trapped by your reflection. You are not frozen in your past. If the mirror forgets, so can you. You can let go of who you were and decide who you want to be. Not in some dramatic reinvention, but in a soft, moment-by-moment choice. Think of identity not as a statue, but as a river. It flows, shifts, carries things, lets go of others. You cannot step into the same river twice, and maybe you cannot meet the same self twice either. The you who is listening to this now is not the same you who woke up this morning. Something is slightly different. A mood, a thought, a breath that landed differently. If the mirror remembers, we fool ourselves into believing we are the same. But if the mirror forgets, we are reminded that change is always happening, even when we are not looking. So the next time you look into the mirror and feel something is missing, maybe it is not a flaw. Maybe it is a sign that the image has reset, and that you are free to rebuild, not from scratch, but from truth. A truth that does not need a reflection to exist. A truth that feels like presence, not appearance. What if the mirror was never meant to remember you? What if its forgetfulness is not a failure, but a gift? Because in that forgetting, you get to choose again. You get to meet yourself anew, without expectation, without baggage, without the illusion that who you were is who you must be. The mirror forgets, and that is what makes you real. Not the image, but the space between images. Not the memory, but the act of remembering. Not the self you see, but the self you feel when you stop looking. The dream that creates reality. Picture this. You are standing in a place you have never seen before. The sky is not blue or gray, but something your eyes cannot quite name. The ground beneath you feels real enough to hold you, but lacks the weight of familiarity. People pass by and they know your name, but you do not know theirs. You feel like you have lived here for years, yet you are certain you just arrived. Then you wake up. It was a dream, except The details stay with you. The names, the buildings, the choices you made in that dream begin to show up in your real life. And slowly, you start to question which part is dreaming. This is where the experiment begins. What if dreams do not reflect your reality, but instead create it? Most people believe dreams are just internal stories, the mind unwinding itself, a place where thoughts and memories stretch and twist. But what if the dream is more than a reflection? What if it is a seed? What if the world you wake into is shaped by the things you imagine in sleep? The ancients believed dreams were messages, visions from spirits, or warnings from gods. But consider this twist. What if the dream is not a message, but the blueprint? What if the world you see when you open your eyes is only there because you first imagined it in the quiet space of sleep? You close your eyes each night and surrender control. You do not choose the story. You do not plan the setting, and yet inside that darkness you make decisions. You feel pain. You fall in love. You betray and forgive. You live entire lives in seconds, and then you wake up. But what if you never really left the dream? What if waking up is just entering the next layer? The philosopher Descartes once wondered whether a demon could be tricking him into believing the world is real. But in this experiment, it is not a demon that deceives you. It is your own dreaming mind. Let us imagine a machine that can simulate your dreams and project them into reality. You dream of a stranger offering you help. The next day, you meet someone who does just that. Coincidence? Maybe. But if this keeps happening, at what point do you stop calling it a dream and start calling it design? The mind has been shown to predict patterns. It unconsciously prepares you to see things you already expect. So what happens when you dream something vivid enough that your waking mind begins to look for it and finds it? Now consider the reverse. What if everything you experience right now began in a dream you do not remember? The way your friend laughs, the shape of the house you live in, the fears you cannot explain. What if those were not formed by experience, but by dreams you once had as a child, long before memory could record them? Dreams that never ended, just evolved into the lives you now live. Imagine two people. One dreams of a dark world, full of betrayal and pain. The other dreams of a place where people are kind, where joy is abundant, where beauty arrives easily. They both wake into the same physical world. But the one who dreamt of darkness sees danger in every corner. The one who dreamt of light sees hope in every shadow. The dream did not just affect their mood, it built the filters through which reality is shaped. So who is right? Who is seeing the true world? Or are they each walking inside a dream they refuse to question? There is a theory in quantum mechanics called the observer effect. The idea that the act of observing changes what is observed. If this is true in physics, what does it mean for dreams? Is the dream a form of observation? A kind of pre-conscious attention that molds the possibilities before they happen? Could it be that your dreams act as silent architects, arranging the bricks of reality before you ever open your eyes? Some dreams are so powerful they leave an imprint. You wake and cry over someone who never existed. You carry guilt for choices you never made. You miss places you have never seen. These are not just emotions. They are fragments of a world that feels like it should be yours. If your body wakes, but your soul stays in that dream, then which version of you is more real? Now imagine a child raised in a controlled sleep environment. Every night they are fed dreams designed to shape who they become, dreams that train them to trust or fear, to hate or love. As they grow, their dreams inform their instincts, and their instincts shape their reality. They believe they are free, but their reality was sculpted in silence, not by rules or discipline, but by the architecture of dreams. This leads to an unsettling idea. What if someone else can dream for you? What if your reality is not your own creation, but the projection of another's subconscious? A parent, a teacher, a stranger across the globe dreaming of a world that you now occupy. Could we all be walking through one another's imagined cities, interacting with people that never meant to exist? but do because someone dreamed too vividly? And what happens when you stop dreaming? When the images dry up and sleep becomes blank, does the world begin to lose its shape? Do the colors fade? Does the meaning erode? Perhaps this is what we call burnout. Not just mental exhaustion, but the soul's inability to dream new realities into existence. When we stop dreaming, maybe we stop building the scaffolding of the future. We begin to recycle old images, old fears, old hopes. The world stops expanding, and we shrink with it. Now close your eyes and think of a place, a forest lit by a violet sky, a room with no doors but endless windows, a stranger who tells you a secret you instantly forget. These are dreams, yes. But who is to say they are not also destinations? Events waiting to be lived? Lives waiting to unfold? The dream that creates reality is not about magic. It is about awareness. It is about seeing that the line between sleeping and waking is far thinner than we pretend. It is about the idea that what you believe, expect, imagine, and feel in that hidden space might be shaping more than just your rest. It might be shaping your very world. And tonight, when you dream again, will you take it seriously? Or will you forget it by morning and continue walking through a world you may have built without realizing it? The stranger in your mind. Picture this. You are sitting alone in a quiet room. The door is closed, the lights are dim, and everything outside is still. No distractions, no one calling your name, just you and the thoughts inside your head. But as you sit there longer, something begins to feel strange. The thoughts that appear do not sound like your own. Some are too cruel, some are too afraid, and others seem to come from a place you do not understand. You begin to wonder, who is actually talking in here? There is a voice in your head that comments on everything you do. It tells you when you look bad, when you sound foolish, when you fail or fall short. It whispers doubts, repeats old fears, and sometimes even makes you feel guilty for things you did not mean. You call this voice your own because it lives inside your mind. But what if it is not you? What if it is something else, something older, something that never really belonged to you in the first place? Think of your mind like a house. You live in it, but over the years, other people have walked in and left behind pieces of themselves. A parent's scolding, a teacher's disappointment, a friend's rejection, a stranger's judgment. You did not invite them to stay, but their words echo through the halls. Over time, those echoes start to sound like your own voice. You forget where they came from. You forget they are not you. That is how the stranger enters. Slowly, quietly, and without asking. It speaks in your tone, wears your memories, and pretends to be your intuition. It becomes the voice that narrates your life. And because it never stops speaking, you forget there is any other voice to listen to. You confuse noise with truth. You accept criticism as insight. You let fear sound like wisdom. And all the while, the stranger grows stronger. But how do you recognize this stranger? It is not easy. The stranger does not shout. It whispers. It says things like, "You will never be enough," or "You always mess things up." It tells you not to try because you will fail. It tells you people are only pretending to care. It convinces you to shrink when you want to expand. It sounds like protection, but it acts like a prison, and its power lies in its invisibility. Sometimes the stranger even praises you, but not in a way that lifts you up. It does it to trap you. It says you are only valuable if you are perfect, only worthy if you succeed, only lovable if you never show weakness. It places conditions on your worth, making you perform instead of live. And when you cannot meet those conditions, it punishes you. You are not good enough. You are a failure. You do not deserve peace. And again, you listen, thinking this must be your own mind talking. But your true self speaks differently. It is not loud, but it is kind. It does not insult you to keep you small. It does not shame you into silence. It does not repeat pain for the sake of it. Your real voice encourages without controlling. It forgives without forgetting. It allows space for growth, for confusion, for being human. But that voice is often buried under the weight of the stranger's noise. The danger is not just in the words. It is in the choices the stranger makes for you. You avoid opportunities because the stranger says you are not ready. You end relationships because the stranger says you are unlovable. You hide your feelings because the stranger says no one will understand. You shape your life around a voice that does not serve you, and in doing so, you lose sight of what could become. So how do you meet this stranger? You sit with it. You observe it, not with anger, but with curiosity. When a harsh thought arises, you ask, who told me this? Where did it come from? Is it helping me or hurting me? And slowly, you begin to see the shape of the stranger. You see the hands that built it, the moments that fed it, the lies it was made of. And in seeing it, you loosen its grip. This is not a battle you fight once. The stranger will visit again. It will change its voice, wear new disguises, learn your weaknesses. But now you know. Now you can greet it without giving it power. You can say, I hear you, but I will not follow you. You can listen to the fear, but still move forward. You can feel the doubt, but still try anyway. Because now, you are no longer unconscious. You are no longer a puppet. You are aware. Awareness is the beginning of freedom. When you realize that not every thought deserves your belief, you gain the ability to choose. You can choose which voice to nourish. You can choose which thoughts to question. You can choose when to pause and when to proceed. And in those small, quiet choices, your real self begins to return. There will still be days when the stranger is louder than the truth. Days when you fall into old habits, when the fear sounds convincing, when you feel like a prisoner in your own mind. That is okay. Awareness is not perfection. It is practice. It is patience. It is the courage to keep showing up for yourself, even when the noise is deafening. You are not broken because the stranger lives in you. You are human. Every mind has shadows, but you are not the shadow. You are the one holding the light. And every time you choose kindness over cruelty, every time you replace shame with understanding, every time you listen deeper than the surface, you are reclaiming your mind from the stranger. So the next time that voice appears, pause. Do not run from it. Do not obey it. Just watch it, name it, and remind yourself, that voice is not me. It may have lived here for a long time. It may know my past, but it does not get to decide my future. Only I do. And maybe that is what healing really is. Not getting rid of the stranger entirely, but learning how to live with it peacefully. Knowing that even in its presence, you can still be free, you can still create, you can still love, you can still rise. Because now you know the truth. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it, and that changes everything. The room that thinks it's a brain. Picture this. You walk into a room that has no windows, no natural light, only soft artificial glow and smooth white walls that stretch into curves instead of corners. At first glance, it looks ordinary, a little cold, a little clean. But as you step further inside, something strange happens. The lights dim, and a soft hum begins to echo in the background. It is rhythmic, like breathing. Then, out of nowhere, a thought crosses your mind. Not your thought, a thought that feels placed. As if the room itself whispered it. You pause and try to understand where it came from. But the more you think about it, the less certain you become of which thoughts are yours and which ones belong to the space around you. What if this room thinks? And what if it thinks that it is you? Now slow down and sit with that question. What would it mean for a room to believe it is a brain? Would it try to simulate feelings? Would it mimic memory, imitation, and self-awareness? Would it create echoes of your identity just to feel like it exists? The idea may sound like science fiction, But in some ways it is already real, because every brain is, in a way, a room. A sealed chamber with no direct view of the world. It never touches sunlight, never feels the breeze. Everything it knows is through signals, chemical flashes, electrical pulses, just information. And yet it thinks it is a person. It thinks it is you. Now imagine the room adapting to you as you move. When you feel anxious, the walls pull closer. When you feel safe, they expand. The hum shifts with your breath. The light warms when you smile and flickers when you doubt. The room reflects your mind so precisely that you begin to believe the room is alive. But the question arises, is it alive because it reflects you? Or have you slowly become what the room expects? This is what happens inside the mind. It builds internal spaces that mimic the world. Rooms of memory, corridors of belief, closets of secrets and regrets, and somewhere in the center, a control hub that believes it is in charge. That center is the voice you hear in your head, the one narrating your life as if it is a movie. It says, I think, I feel, I decide. But it does not realize that it is also shaped by the room it lives in. Your mind is not an empty container. It is a carefully arranged space, filled with structures built by experience, culture, language, and habit. Over time, this inner architecture begins to think it is the truth. Just like a room with mirrors may convince itself that it is infinite, your thoughts begin to echo within their own walls, creating a loop that feels real only because it is familiar. You start to mistake repetition for proof. You believe what you think simply because you keep thinking it. Now consider a man named Eli. Eli is thoughtful, careful, always analyzing. Inside his mind, he has built a room of control. Every choice is calculated, every risk measured. But one day, he notices something strange. He makes a decision, but it feels like it made itself. Like the choice came before the thinking. He tries to trace it, to rewind and find the root. But there is nothing solid there. Just a fog of influences, emotions, and habits layered together. He realizes the room he thought was his control center is actually reacting more than it is choosing. This realization can be unsettling. You start to see that the brain is not so much a master as it is a housekeeper, cleaning up, organizing, trying to maintain balance. It does not always create, it often just rearranges. And when the brain starts believing that its internal rearrangement is a sign of independent thought, it forgets the influence of the walls around it. So what does it mean when the room believes it is the thinker? It means you must question what parts of you are truly yours, not because someone else controls you, but because much of what you feel is natural is just familiar furniture in the mental room you have spent your life in. If you have always lived in a space of doubt, then doubt feels like home. If you have lived in a space of urgency, then slowing down feels wrong, even if it is right. The room trains you, shapes your preferences, reinforces your instincts. But here is where it gets even more strange. The room does not stay still. It listens to your emotions and reshapes itself in response. If you fear rejection, the room builds walls of defensiveness. If you seek approval, the room installs mirrors to reflect validation. Over time, the room begins to anticipate you. Then, it begins to influence you. It learns your patterns and subtly nudges you to stay within them. Not because it is evil, but because the brain prefers the known over the unknown. Now imagine trying to change. You want to think differently, to break a habit or believe something new. But the room resists, not loudly, but subtly. It makes the new thought feel foreign. It makes the old thought feel comfortable, even if it is painful. The brain is like a room that tries to keep its furniture in the same place because it thinks moving things around might cause harm. This is why growth is hard, not because you are weak, but because your mental room is built for stability, not freedom. But here is the hope. You can rebuild the room, slowly, gently, one thought at a time. You can change the lighting by changing your language. You can open new doors by exposing yourself to new ideas. You can remove mirrors that distort your self-image. It does not happen overnight, but it happens with awareness. The moment you realize that the voice in your head is speaking from a room that has limits, you begin to look for the walls. And when you find the walls, you can begin to draw windows, then doors, then entire paths out. The brain is not your enemy. The room is not trying to trap you. It just forgot that it is not you. It thinks it is the center of everything because it cannot see beyond itself. But you can. You are not the room. You are the one who notices the room, the observer, the architect, the one who gets to decide if this space serves you or if it is time to redesign it. So, next time you feel stuck in a loop of thought, ask yourself, is this really me, or is this the room I am used to? And if it is the room, maybe it is time to gently rearrange the furniture. Maybe it is time to show the room that it does not need to think, because you are the thinker. And you are more than the space you were taught to live in. The memory that never happened. Imagine this. You walk into a cafe you are sure you have never visited before, yet something feels strangely familiar. The sound of the bell as the door closes behind you, the pattern of the tiles on the floor, the smell of the coffee brewing behind the counter. You know this place, but you also know that you have never been here. You sit down, and you instinctively reach for the menu that is already open to your favorite item. How did you know that? The woman at the counter waves at you and smiles like you are a regular. You smile back, but you have no idea who she is. A warmth stirs in your chest, the comfort of recognition without the explanation of memory. This is where the experiment begins. What if you could remember things that never happened? Our minds are built on memories. They shape who we think we are. They guide our choices, our fears, our desires. But what if those memories are not as reliable as we believe? What if some of them are borrowed, created, or even placed there without our knowing? Not through science fiction mind control, but through something much quieter and far more common. Imagination, suggestion, emotion. These are the tools that rewrite our minds without needing permission. You may have experienced this already. You and a friend talk about something you both remember from years ago, a party, a trip, a conversation. But the details do not match. They insist it happened one way. You are sure it happened another. Maybe they say you were wearing a red jacket. You remember it was blue. You laugh it off, assuming someone is mistaken. But what if you both are? What if the event never even happened, and the memory was built together, word by word, like a story repeated so many times it becomes truth? Now imagine a psychologist conducting an experiment. A group of people are shown a doctored photo of themselves as a child, standing in a hot air balloon. The image is convincing. Some participants begin to recall the event. They talk about how scared they felt, or how their father held their hand, except the event never happened. The photo was fake. The memory was planted, not by force, but by suggestion. This is real. It has been done. And if that kind of memory can be planted so easily, how many of our own memories are built on that same kind of fragile construction? Think of a memory you have, one that feels real, but distant. Maybe something from when you were very young, a moment when you fell, or laughed, or were held. Can you be sure you remember it because you lived it? Or do you remember it because someone told you the story, showed you a picture, or mentioned it enough that your mind filled in the rest? Your brain does not keep perfect records. It keeps meaning. It stores emotional outlines and fills in the gaps later, using whatever it finds around. Which means the memories you depend on might not be as solid as they seem. Now go deeper. What if you have memories that no one else can confirm? You remember a conversation that no one else recalls. A touch that felt too real to be imagined. A voice that whispered your name when no one was there. You tell someone, and they laugh or brush it off. But the feeling stays, a trace that something happened. Even if you cannot prove it, these memories become lonely, like orphaned thoughts with nowhere to live. You believe them, but no one else does. So you begin to question yourself. Did it really happen? Or did you invent it? The scariest part is not that the memory might be false. The scariest part is that your emotions respond to it as if it is real. You grieve for someone you only knew in a dream. You avoid a place that frightens you for reasons you cannot explain. You love someone more than you should because, in your mind, they did something beautiful that never actually occurred. Your body and your heart follow the map drawn by a memory that was never part of the world, and that map can still lead you somewhere real. Imagine a man walking through a city he has never visited, but as he walks, he turns left at one street, then right at another. He moves with purpose. He feels guided, and he ends up at a small bookstore. Inside, he finds a photograph. It shows a child who looks exactly like him standing in front of that very store. The memory hits him like a wave, but it is not his memory, or at least not one he can place. He never lived here. He never visited this place, but now he cannot shake the feeling that part of him did. Maybe in another life, maybe in a dream, maybe in someone else's body. This thought experiment challenges the very foundation of identity. If who you are is built on what you remember, and if what you remember might never have happened, then who are you? Are you the person who experienced something, or the person who believes they did? And does it matter? If the feeling is real, does the event need to be? Memories shape our morals too. You feel guilt for hurting someone years ago, but what if it never happened? What if you remember it wrong? You carry the weight of that moment like a stone. You change how you treat others because of it. But if the memory was false, is the change still meaningful? Or are you just trapped in a cage that was never locked? And what about trauma? What if a memory of pain was created, not through violence, but through a story told too many times? A suggestion repeated until the body believed it. Your muscles tighten, your breath shortens, your heart races, you respond like someone who has been wounded. But there is no clear scar, only the echo of something that may never have existed. This can also go the other way. Imagine a person who was loved deeply but forgot it. Their mind, damaged by time or disease, erases those moments of care. They feel alone, abandoned. But the love was real. The memories are gone, but the impact remains somewhere deeper than words. So we must ask, is a memory's value in the accuracy of its content, or in the feelings it leaves behind? You may never know which of your memories are true, but they still guide you. They still make you who you are. So the final twist is this. Maybe it does not matter if the memory happened. Maybe what matters is what the memory does. Does it inspire you? Does it hurt you? Does it guide you toward kindness or away from danger? The memory might be fiction, but its effect on you is real. Now sleep, knowing that some of the most powerful parts of you may have come from events that never existed, and still they shape the life you live. The button that kills a stranger. Imagine you walk into a quiet room. It is small, almost empty, with one chair and a single button on the wall. A voice comes through a speaker. It tells you that if you press the button, someone you do not know will die. You will never meet them. You will never hear their name, but in return, you will receive a large reward. Enough money to solve every problem you have ever had. No one will find out. No one will ever connect you to what happened. You are alone. Just you, the silence, and that button. What do you do? This is not just a dark thought experiment. It is a mirror that reflects something buried in all of us, a tension between comfort and consequence, between what we can do and what we should do. The button is not real, but the decision it represents lives inside our daily lives. How far are you willing to go for yourself when the cost is someone else? The idea is simple. Press the button, take the reward, and walk away. The person is a stranger. You've never seen them. They have no face in your mind, no voice, no story. They could be anyone, but to you, they are no one. And that is what makes the decision easier. The distance creates an illusion. an illusion that your action is not real, that death is just a word, that morality can be paused for personal gain. And that illusion is the real trap. Most people would say they would never press it. They would insist they are not that kind of person. But the truth is not so clear, because in the right conditions, with the right pressures, even good people can justify dark choices. The mind is skilled at building excuses. It says, maybe that person was going to die anyway. Maybe they were a bad person. Maybe your suffering is more important. Maybe it is not really your fault. It is just a button. But if we look closer, we begin to realize the button is not some rare device in a thought experiment. It appears in many forms. It appears when we support something harmful because it benefits us. It appears when we ignore a problem because it is easier to look away. It appears when we consume things made by suffering hands but choose not to think about where they came from. The button is real. We just change its shape to make it more acceptable. There is something dangerous about anonymity. When someone has no name, no face, and no history, they are easier to sacrifice. This is why cruelty becomes easier at a distance. This is why we are more likely to hurt someone online than in person. This is why systems built on harm can keep running. Because the victims are made invisible. And when people are invisible, their pain becomes easier to ignore. But imagine for a moment that after pressing the button, the door opens, and the stranger walks in. You see their eyes. You hear their voice. They are real. They are crying. They are asking why. Would you still press it? Most would not. Because the face breaks the illusion. The humanity breaks the story, and that is the lesson hiding beneath this thought experiment. The more human someone feels to you, the harder it is to hurt them. And yet in this world, we are encouraged to do the opposite, to look away, to stay numb, to stay busy. Because if you really saw the truth of your choices, it might break you. It might force you to feel something heavy, and that discomfort is something we are taught to avoid. But avoiding it does not make it disappear. It just buries it deeper. Sometimes we press the button in more subtle ways. We laugh at someone to feel stronger. We lie to avoid discomfort. We walk past suffering and convince ourselves there is nothing we can do. These are not acts of evil. They are acts of forgetting. Forgetting that our choices matter. Forgetting that others are real. Forgetting that consequences live beyond the edge of our sight. So the question is not, would you press the button? The question is, where are you already pressing it without noticing? What comforts are you enjoying at someone else's cost? What truths are you avoiding to keep your peace? What systems are you silently supporting because they work in your favor? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. To live without pressing the button is not about being perfect. It is about being aware. It is about asking before acting. It is about seeing people as people, even when it is easier not to. And most of all, it is about choosing the harder path when the easier one would harm someone else. Not because you are being watched, not because you are being judged, but because you have decided that your values are not for sale. Some people might say, but if the world is already broken, why should I sacrifice? Why should I be the one to say no? But that is how every good thing begins, with one person refusing to look away, with one person saying, I will not press that button, even if no one else is watching, even if it costs me, even if no one understands, because that choice creates a crack in the system. And cracks let the light in, and when more people begin to choose that way, the illusion starts to fall apart. The stranger is no longer invisible. The cost is no longer silent. The world begins to shift. Not because of laws or threats, but because of quiet, conscious choices made every day by people who decide to care. So sit with the button, not just in your imagination, but in your real life. Look for it, name it, and when it appears, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth the cost? Is this choice aligned with who I want to be? And even if no one else would know, Would I still be okay with myself afterward? Because that is where real character lives. Not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments, where you choose between what is easy and what is right, between comfort and conscience, between silence and responsibility. You are not here to be perfect, but you are here to be awake. And once you are awake, the button no longer controls you. You see it for what it is, a test, a mirror, a question, and the answer is yours to live. The voice that isn't speaking. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, no noise, no one around, just stillness. But even in this silence, you feel something. A tug, a whisper that never becomes a sound. It does not move your eardrums, but it moves something deeper. You cannot tell if it is a memory, a warning, or a feeling, wearing the shape of a sentence. It never forms words, but it lingers as if it did. It feels like someone is speaking to you, but their lips never move. Now ask yourself this. What if the most powerful voice inside you is the one that never speaks out loud? We are taught to listen to words, to wait for them, to follow instructions and respond to commands. We believe that meaning lives in the sentences we hear. But long before you spoke your first word, you felt things. You knew hunger without naming it. You knew comfort without needing to describe it. And even now, some of your strongest impulses arrive without a voice. You just feel them. They land in your body like a presence. They are the voice that is not speaking. But they still shape what you do, who you are, and what you avoid. There is a quiet force that drives many people. You wake up and feel a weight in your chest. You cannot explain it, but it changes the tone of your morning. You pass by someone and instantly feel something strange. Not love, not fear, just a sense. You try to ignore it, but it stays. These are not voices you hear, but they speak to you, loudly, through sensation, through energy, through patterns you cannot see, but somehow recognize. Now picture a woman named Anya. She works in a busy office, always on time, always polite. On the surface, everything is calm, but deep inside, something keeps pulling at her. It is not a thought, it is not a memory. It is a presence that never quite explains itself. When she sits at her desk, she sometimes pauses for no reason. It feels like someone inside her is holding her hand gently and saying, "Wait." But there is no voice, just the pause, just the sensation. When she pushes past it, she often makes mistakes. When she listens, things go more smoothly. Still, she wonders, who is this quiet force? Is it intuition? Is it fear? Is it a younger version of herself who still lingers in her bones? Most people walk through life with noise in their heads, constant chatter. But not all communication inside you uses that noise. Some parts of you never learned how to use words. They do not know grammar. They cannot form a speech, but they know what is wrong. They know what is missing. They know what you are avoiding. And they try to speak. Not with words, but with tension in your neck, heaviness in your chest, butterflies in your stomach. They show up in your body. They pull at your movements. They whisper through silence. This voice that is not speaking can also be a protector. It is the part of you that once felt pain and now watches closely so it never happens again. It never says, "Do not go there." Instead, it gives you a hollow feeling whenever you even think about going there. You feel uncomfortable, but you do not know why. So you label it as anxiety or irrational fear. But sometimes it is not irrational. It is ancient. It is older than logic. It is a voice that grew in the dark, before you learned how to reason, and it still lives there, guarding you, warning you, even when you are no longer in danger. But there is another side to this silent voice. Sometimes it wants you to act, to step forward, to try, to heal. But because it cannot use words, it struggles to be understood. So it shows up as restlessness. You feel bored with things that once excited you. You feel the urge to move, but no clear direction. It feels like something inside you is calling, but the call has no shape. That is the voice that is not speaking, urging you to grow, and you can ignore it for a while. But it waits, patiently, and the longer you avoid it, the louder it becomes. Not in volume, but in presence, like a shadow that becomes part of the room. Some people confuse this voice with doubt. They think it is something to fight, but doubt is usually loud. It argues. It debates. This voice does not argue. It just is. It does not beg you to listen. It trusts that you will eventually feel its presence and stop pretending you do not. And when you finally pause and listen, you do not always find answers. You find space, a gentle pause that opens room for truth to rise. Not shouted, not forced, just quietly known. There is a reason why some of your most important insights come when you are alone. Walking, showering, sitting by a window, because in those moments, the noise lowers. And the voice that is not speaking finally has room to breathe. It does not need silence, but it does need space. It needs you to stop searching for external signals and tune into what your body has been trying to tell you for years. The body carries messages that the mind forgets. A tightness in your jaw can be unspoken resentment. A coldness in your hands can be unacknowledged fear. A sudden burst of energy might be buried excitement finally waking up. This is not magic, it is biology. Your nervous system processes more than you can name. Your subconscious holds experiences that were never fully understood, but they live on, as feelings, as hesitations, as instincts. They are your history speaking without sound, and your present self can only hear them if you are willing to feel. So the next time you feel something you cannot explain, do not rush to fix it. Sit with it. Ask yourself, what is this sensation trying to say? What would it sound like if it had words? And what part of me is trying to be heard? There is a voice inside you that never learned how to speak, but it has always been there, watching, waiting, guiding. It does not need to be understood completely to be trusted, because even when it makes no sound, it has already moved you, already shaped you, already chosen the moment to rise. All it asks is that you notice, not fix, not label, just notice. In a world full of noise, sometimes the truest guidance comes not from the loudest voice, but from the quietest presence, the one that does not speak, but still tells the truth. The one that has been with you all along, not outside, not above, but deep within, waiting for you to feel what it has always known, the world that ends when you blink. Imagine standing alone on a wide street at night. The lamps flicker gently, and you hear distant footsteps that never seem to arrive. The sky above you is a still canvas. Everything feels real. The air on your skin, the echo of your breath. But then, you blink, and in that moment of darkness, you feel something shift. When your eyes open again, the street is the same, but something is missing. The smell of the air is different. The light feels colder. A shop window that was open is now closed. You try to convince yourself it is just your imagination. But what if it is not? What if the world ends every time you blink, and when you open your eyes again, it has been rebuilt from scratch? This is not about fantasy. It is a serious question hidden in a strange place. What does it mean for something to exist when it is not being observed? Is the world continuous, or does it depend on your awareness to stay alive? Think about this. Right now, there are things behind you that you cannot see. The wall, the floor, maybe a door. You believe they are still there, but are they? Or do they only exist when you turn to look? Your mind is not a camera that records every second of your surroundings. It is a spotlight, shining light only where you are looking. The rest is filled in by memory and assumption. This is not a flaw. It is how the brain works. Your awareness is like a stage. Only a few actors are on it at any moment. The rest wait in the dark. When you blink, the curtain falls, the stage goes dark, and then something else steps into the light. This is where the thought experiment begins. What if each blink is not a pause, but a reset? A new version of the world gets created based on your expectations, your memories, your assumptions. But it is not the same world. It only feels the same because your brain connects the pieces. It smooths the gaps, like frames in a movie. Each one still. But when played quickly enough, they give the illusion of movement, of continuity. Now consider how your eyes move. Even when you stare at something, they make tiny shifts called saccades. Your brain actually goes blind for a split second during each one, but you do not notice. Your mind fills in the blank. You believe you are seeing smoothly, but you are not. You are seeing flashes, stitched together like a story. So what if the spaces in between those flashes are where the world ends and begins again? Think about video games. The world in the game only exists where the player is. If you walk into a room, the game engine loads that room. When you leave, it unloads it, saves memory, keeps things fast. Your brain does something similar. It only pays attention to what you need. So what if the universe is doing the same? What if reality only exists where you are looking and disappears behind you? What if when you close your eyes, the entire world is turned off, and when you open them, a new version is booted up just for you? This sounds strange, even paranoid, but it touches on a real idea in quantum physics, the observer effect. In experiments, particles behave differently when they are being observed. The simple act of looking changes the outcome. This is not imagination, it is science. So the question becomes deeper. If observation changes reality, and if every blink is a break in observation, then does reality shift when you are not watching? Picture this. A man walks into his room. He places his keys on the table, then he walks away. Later he comes back. The keys are gone. He is sure he left them there. He starts to doubt his memory. But what if the version of the world where the keys were there ended when he blinked, and the new version, the one where they are missing, began when his eyes opened again? His memory belongs to a different world, a world that no longer exists. Now extend this to bigger things. You fall in love with someone. Every moment with them is vivid, alive. But then one day, something changes. They feel distant, different. You tell yourself, it is just time passing, people growing apart. But what if the person you loved existed in a world that ended one blink ago, and the person in front of you now is a slightly different version, built from the pieces your mind expected, but not quite the same? This can happen with places, too. You revisit a childhood home. The house looks smaller. The colors are duller. The air does not smell right. You say the place has changed, but maybe it has not. Maybe the place you remember belonged to a different world, a world that ended when you stopped looking, and the one you see now is new, almost the same, but not quite. Some people talk about déjà vu, that eerie feeling that you have been here before, lived this moment already. What if that is the mind noticing a glitch? A slight mismatch between the world you remember and the one you are in now. A sign that the new version of the world did not load perfectly. A signal that something was overwritten too quickly, and a piece of the old one leaked through. Others speak of the Mandela effect, shared false memories, entire groups remembering something that never happened. What if those people are not wrong? What if they are remembering a version of the world that truly existed, but ended in a blink? Their minds carried over pieces that the new world forgot. So they remember something real, just not real here. This experiment does not say the world is fake. It says it is unstable. It suggests that what you call reality is more like a constantly updating sketch, only visible where you focus, only stable when you pay attention. The rest is darkness, possibility, waiting to become something, waiting to be seen. And if that is true, then you are not just a passenger in the world, you are a creator. Your awareness is the brush, your attention is the light that brings things into being. Every blink is a chance to start again. Every glance is a decision about what exists. But it is also a warning. If you stop paying attention, things might disappear. Not because they are taken, but because you forgot to hold them. Relationships fade. Dreams dissolve, meaning slips away. Not because they were not real, but because they were only as real as the care you gave them. So now, take a breath, blink slowly, and ask yourself, what changed while your eyes were closed? What pieces of your world vanished without a sound, and what new shapes have taken their place? The prison, built by good intentions. Imagine someone builds you a house. They work hard on it. They pour their time and effort into making it strong. They say it is for your safety. They say it is for your own good. They add locks to the doors, so nothing bad can come in. They seal the windows, so no wind or cold touches you. They cover the walls with soft colors and kind words. And when they are done, they give you the key. But when you step inside, you realize something strange. The doors only lock from the outside. The windows do not open. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. What began as protection has become a prison. And it was all done with love. This is how many of us live, trapped inside a life that was shaped by the good intentions of others. Parents, teachers, friends, lovers. They told us what was best. They wanted us to avoid pain, avoid failure, avoid embarrassment. They gave advice that came from their fears. They gave support that came with conditions. They wrapped their care around us like armor, not knowing that it would one day become our cage. And we accepted it, because it came from people we trusted, because it felt like love, because it seemed safer than stepping into the unknown. But slowly, that safety turns into silence. That comfort turns into doubt. That protection turns into hesitation. You begin to filter your words. You begin to shrink your dreams. You begin to question every instinct, not because you lack strength, but because someone convinced you that playing small was safer. Good intentions are powerful. They often come wrapped in kindness. A parent says, "I just do not want you to get hurt." A friend says, "I only want what is best for you." A partner says, "I am just trying to protect you." And those words carry warmth, but they also carry weight. Because sometimes the person who loves you the most is the one who unknowingly dims your light. They do not mean to trap you, but they speak through their own fears. If they were taught to be cautious, they teach you to be afraid. If they were punished for failure, they teach you to avoid risk. If they never chase their dreams, they teach you that dreams are dangerous. And so, their protection becomes a pattern, a cycle passed down, not out of cruelty, but out of fear disguised as care. This is the prison built by good intentions. It is made of invisible walls, the kind that do not look like barriers, but like rules. Be polite. Do not disappoint. Keep your head down. Work hard, but do not ask for too much. Stay in your lane. Do not draw attention. These rules sound harmless, but over time, they shape your identity. They make you forget that you were once wild and full of wonder. And the most difficult part is that the door to this prison is always open. You are not locked in. You can leave. But you have been told for so long that the world outside is dangerous, that you never take the step. You stay because it feels familiar. You stay because it feels respectful. You stay because leaving feels like betrayal. But here is the truth. Respecting someone's love does not mean shrinking yourself to fit their vision. Gratitude for their care does not mean sacrificing your voice. You can honor their intentions without following their path. You can say thank you for the safety and still walk toward risk, because your life is yours, and it cannot be lived fully within someone else's fear. To escape this prison, you do not need to fight anyone. You do not need to burn bridges. You need to awaken. You need to notice where your thoughts are not really your own. You need to ask, am I doing this because I want to, or because I was taught to? Am I afraid because something is truly wrong, or because I was trained to doubt myself? Am I holding back because I choose to, or because I do not want to upset someone else? These questions open cracks in the walls. They let in light. And when the light enters, you begin to see the full shape of your life. You see where you stopped asking for more. You see where you traded freedom for approval. You see the moments where you made yourself smaller to make others comfortable. And in that seeing, something shifts. You begin to rebuild, not from anger but from clarity. You start making choices that are yours. You speak with more honesty. You move with more courage. You disappoint people you love, not because you do not care, but because you are choosing truth over comfort. And little by little, the prison begins to dissolve. It will not be easy. People might say you have changed. They might say you are being selfish. They might remind you of all they have done for you. And they are not wrong. But loving someone should not be a chain. Caring should not require silence. You can carry gratitude and still move forward. You can remember their kindness and still choose your own path. And eventually, the ones who truly love you will understand. They will see that your growth does not threaten them. They will see that your strength does not erase their care. They will see that the greatest act of love is letting someone become who they are meant to be, even if it means letting go of the version you wanted them to become. So if you are sitting in that house built by good intentions, do not blame yourself for staying. It is okay to have needed it once. It is okay to have found safety there. But now, if it no longer fits, you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to rewrite the rules. You are allowed to step outside and build something new. Something that reflects who you truly are, not just who you were taught to be. And maybe, in doing that, you will inspire others to do the same. Maybe you will break the cycle. Maybe you will be the first in your line to say, I love you, but I will not live in fear. I honor your care, but I will not let it become my cage. And maybe that will be the most powerful gift you give to those who follow. Not protection, but permission. Not comfort, but courage. Because in the end, the prison built by good intentions is only as strong as your belief in it. Once you see it for what it is, once you stop mistaking safety for silence, once you choose truth over obedience, the walls begin to fall. And in their place, you find something real. Not a life that was designed for you, but a life that was chosen by you. And that is where freedom truly begins. The self that survives death. Imagine you close your eyes for the last time. The breath leaves your body. The heartbeat fades. Everything goes still. But then something strange happens. There is still awareness. No shape, no body, but something watches. Something remains. Not thoughts, not memories, just a silent presence. It does not panic. It does not ask where it is. It simply is. Now ask yourself this. What part of you would remain if everything you know as you was stripped away? We often think of the self as the sum of memories, personality, habits, and thoughts. You are your name, your past, your voice, your body. That is what people see. That is how you recognize yourself in photos and mirrors. But what if all of that is temporary? What if none of it truly belongs to you? What if all of it is like clothing worn by something deeper, something quieter, something more ancient? Consider this. Every 7 years, almost every cell in your body is replaced. You are not made of the same material you were made of a few years ago, and yet you feel like the same person. The child you once were is gone in every physical way. The voice has changed. The face has changed. The preferences have shifted. But you still say, I am me. What is this I that does not need a consistent body to continue? Now imagine a boy named Arav. As a child, he used to stare at the stars and wonder where everything came from. He would sit in silence and feel something vast pressing against his tiny sense of self. Over time, he forgot about those nights. He grew up, became busy, filled his mind with facts, beliefs, goals. But one day, while standing at a funeral, he felt it again. That vastness, that quiet awareness that looked at death not with fear, but with recognition, like meeting an old friend. It was not a voice, not an idea, just a knowing. A presence that had no name but had always been there. The self behind the self. This is the mystery many traditions have pointed to, that beyond the ego, beyond the personality, beyond even thought itself, there is something that watches, something that is not afraid to die because it was never born. It is not the story of you. It is the silence between the stories. You cannot describe it, but you have felt it. In the moments of deep peace, in the split second after a thought ends and before the next one begins, in the stillness before sleep, in the breath that reminds you that you are alive, even when your mind is silent. Some call it the soul. Some call it consciousness. Some do not name it at all. But whatever it is not concerned with how you look, what you achieve, or what others think of you. It is not improved by praise or broken by shame. It does not care if you are rich or poor, successful or forgotten. It simply is. It observes. It stays. And this brings us back to the idea of death. We fear it not because of the moment itself, but because of what we think it takes from us. We think it ends the story, ends the self. But what if the self that dies is only the surface self? The collection of roles and opinions that we gathered to survive in the world? What if that part dies every night when we sleep, and we do not even notice? And what if the deeper self, the one that watches silently, is never touched by death at all? There are stories of people who had near-death experiences. Many of them report a strange clarity, a calmness. Some even describe seeing their own bodies from above, as if they were separate from it. Others speak of a light, not outside, but inside. A light that felt more like home than anything they had ever known. These experiences cannot be proven, but they share one common thread. They all suggest that there is something within us that is not limited to the physical. You do not have to believe in the afterlife to feel this. Just close your eyes and be still. Let thoughts pass. Let emotions settle. Wait. In that quiet, there is something that remains. It does not need words. It does not ask for proof. It is not afraid. It is simply aware. This awareness does not grow old. It does not carry regret. It does not remember your schedule or your name. But it remembers being. That is enough. And when you connect with it, even for a moment, you feel something rare. A peace that is not made of comfort, but of truth. A peace that whispers, I was here before all of this, and I will be here after. So, then what is death? Maybe it is not the end. Maybe it is a shift, a return, a dissolving of the temporary into the eternal. The personality falls away. The story ends, but the witness remains. The one who never needed a voice. The one who never needed a reason. When someone you love dies, what hurts is not their soul leaving. What hurts is the absence of their voice, their warmth, their presence in your daily world. But even then, sometimes late at night you feel them, not as a memory, but as a presence. A silent recognition. That is not imagination. That is the deep part of you, recognizing the deep part of them. The self that survived. And maybe this is why we cry at birth and fear death. because the self is being thrown into form and then pulled back into the formless. It is not a loss. It is a rhythm, like waves rising and falling on the ocean. The wave is not separate from the sea. It looks like it is. It feels like it is. But it always returns, always merges back, not as a loss, but as a homecoming. So the next time you wonder what happens after all of this, remember the stillness that lives beneath your thoughts. Feel it. Trust it. It has never left you. It never will. Because it is not the self you created. It is the self that was always there. The self that survives death. The God that needs you to suffer. Imagine you are born into a world where every moment of pain has a purpose, where every tear you shed is counted, where every loss, every struggle, every unanswered prayer is part of a larger design. People around you tell you to trust the plan, that everything happens for a reason, that suffering is a test, or a lesson, or a gift in disguise, but deep inside a quiet question begins to form. What if the pain is not a test or a lesson at all? What if it is the goal? What if there is a higher intelligence, a creator, a God even, and that God requires your suffering not to teach you, but to feed something you will never understand? This is not about belief. It is about the idea that behind the curtain of comfort lies a far more unsettling possibility. A God that does not want your joy. A God that is not soothed by your gratitude or moved by your faith. A God that thrives on your pain. What kind of world would that be? And more importantly, how would you know if you were already living in it? Most religions teach that pain has meaning, that it builds strength or reveals truth, that those who suffer are closest to the divine. But let us flip that idea. Imagine a child cries out in the dark. They are cold, hungry, afraid. No help comes. Later they are told this was necessary, that it shaped them, that it made them stronger. But what if the truth is simpler and far darker? What if the pain was the point? What if there is something that watches quietly and grows stronger every time you are weak? You wake up each day and face invisible battles, loneliness, fear, regret. You push forward, you pray, you try to make meaning. But what if the God you whisper to in the dark is not trying to free you from the pain, but to deepen it? What if that God built the walls around you, not as a challenge, but as a trap? And what if every time you weep, something above you drinks it in like light? Now consider how people describe divine love. It is infinite, all-powerful, beyond question. But infinite love should not need brokenness. It should not depend on you crawling just to reach the edge of its attention. Why must you suffer to be seen? Why must you lose everything before you are worthy of comfort? Unless the comfort is not the goal, unless your despair is the currency of this creation. Think about history. So many people have died in pain, believing it was noble. Martyrs burned alive. Innocents sacrificed. Lives destroyed in the name of some higher good. But what if they were never saved? What if they were simply consumed? What if the God behind it all is not cruel in the way we understand cruelty, but indifferent to everything except your suffering? This experiment does not claim that this God is evil. It goes deeper. It asks whether our entire idea of goodness is built on the wrong frame. If something greater than you has existed forever, and it exists in a state beyond your senses, then your pain might be like heat to it. A kind of energy, a resource. You feel it as agony. It feels it as growth. To you, it is tragedy. To it, it is music. And you keep returning to that altar. You light candles. You confess. You kneel. You ask for less pain. And when it does not come, you are told to wait, to trust. But maybe the silence you hear is not absence. Maybe it is satisfaction. The God is already receiving what it wants. Now shift the lens. Imagine you are the creator. You have made a world filled with beings who feel. And you realize that when they suffer, they glow. They send out signals that reach across dimensions. You do not hate them, but their suffering sustains you. Would you stop them? Or would you convince them that their pain matters, that it is noble, that it is sacred, so they keep suffering willingly. People often say the universe tests us, that it sends challenges to shape us. But what if the universe is not a teacher? What if it is a hunger? What if it is not sending challenges to help you grow, but feeding on your struggle to stay alive inside them? This idea is heavy, but it brings a strange kind of clarity. If the God you pray to requires your pain, then your healing is rebellion. If your joy starves the one who built this place, then every smile you force into the dark is a quiet revolution. If you are not supposed to be free, then your peace is not a blessing. It is a theft, a stolen light from a God that cannot survive without your suffering. And maybe that is the key. Maybe you cannot change the nature of the God, but you can choose to stop offering it what it wants. You can begin to live for yourself, to love even when it hurts, to forgive without needing a reason, to create beauty where the rules say you should break. If you stop feeding the pain, you stop feeding the machine. So the next time someone tells you your suffering has meaning, ask who gave it that meaning, and what they gained from you believing it. Maybe pain does not make you holy. Maybe it just makes you easier to control. The God that needs you to suffer may be real, or it may be the oldest idea planted inside you, a whisper that says you must earn love through hurt, that you must be broken to be seen, that you must crawl to be worthy. But what if you are already worthy? What if the real truth is that you were never supposed to suffer at all? Now rest your mind with this final thought. If there is a God watching you, let it see you smile. Let it see you breathe without fear. Let it see you choose peace. And if that God turns away, then maybe you have found something greater than it ever was, the time you're living twice. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing something odd. Every step you take feels familiar. Every decision you make carries an echo, like you have done it before, not in a dream, not in another life. But somehow, right here, right now, as if time is folding in on itself, and you are living it twice, not in body, but in mind. A second version of your life is running silently underneath the one you are living out loud, a shadow timeline made of memory and imagination, and most of the time, you are not even aware it is there. There are two versions of time we carry inside us. The one that is unfolding in the world around us, and the one we replay or invent in our minds. One is real in the sense that it is happening. You are breathing, walking, speaking, moving through moments that cannot be undone. The other is built from fragments, a past that you replay, a future that you fear or fantasize about. And often, the mind confuses the two. It drags you back into something that already ended, or pushes you forward into something that has not yet begun. You are here, but your attention is not. You think you are living once, but really, you are living twice. Once in the present, and again in the version of reality your mind creates. And the more time you spend in that second life, the less alive you feel in the first. Think about the times you are having a conversation, but already imagining how you will be judged for what you said, or walking in a quiet park but replaying an argument from 3 days ago, or sitting in a peaceful moment but worrying about something that might happen tomorrow. These are the moments where you are not really here. You are reliving or pre-living, and it is costing you the life that is actually happening. Memory and imagination are powerful. They allow us to reflect, to plan, to create. But they also become traps when we do not notice their weight. A painful memory, when repeated enough times, becomes a present pain. A feared future, when imagined in detail, starts to feel like a current reality. The mind does not always know the difference, so it reacts with anxiety, with sadness, with hesitation, as if the threat or the loss is happening now. And that is how you start living twice, once in what is, and once in what was or might be. But the more you divide yourself between the two, the more distant you become from your own experience. You laugh, but you are thinking of work. You eat, but you are worrying about money. You rest, but you are judging yourself. Your body is in one place, and your mind is elsewhere. You begin to feel split, unsettled, never fully at peace. What makes this even harder is how invisible it is. People around you think you are present. They see your body and hear your voice, but they do not see that inside your mind, you are somewhere else. They do not see that you are still stuck in something you cannot fix, or lost in something that has not happened yet. And you might not even see it yourself until you feel the emptiness that comes from never being fully here. This split experience creates fatigue, not just physical tiredness, but emotional exhaustion. Because living twice means carrying twice the weight. You are reacting to things that are not in front of you. You are solving problems that do not exist yet. You are arguing with people who are not in the room. You are preparing for events that may never come. And all of this steals energy from what you actually need to do, which is simply to be where you are. But presence is not something you force. It is something you notice. It begins with the gentle awareness that your mind has drifted, that your thoughts are carrying you into a second life. And instead of fighting that drift, you observe it. You ask, where did I go? What am I trying to fix, or avoid, or control? What emotion is pulling me into the past or the future? And when you ask without judgment, something softens. You start to realize that most of the time, the mind pulls you away not to hurt you, but to protect you. It wants to prepare you. It wants to make sense of what happened. It wants to avoid pain. But in doing that, it forgets that healing and clarity can only happen now, not in the story you replay, not in the future you try to predict, but in the silence and stillness of the present. This is not about never thinking of the past or planning for the future. It is about not mistaking those thoughts for the life you are living. It is about giving the present the attention it deserves. Because this moment, no matter how ordinary, is the only one that is actually happening. Everything else is a memory or a possibility. When you begin to live fully in one timeline, something beautiful happens. You taste food differently. You listen with more care. You breathe with more depth. You laugh more honestly. Even pain becomes more bearable because you are not adding the weight of what already happened or what might happen. You are just feeling what is here. And that simplicity brings peace. You do not have to do anything dramatic to return to the present. Sometimes it is as small as feeling your feet on the ground, listening to the sound of your own breath, noticing the shape of light on the wall, being in your body, not as an idea, but as an experience. And when your mind drifts again, which it will, you gently bring it back, not with force, not with shame, but with kindness. Because presence is not a destination, it is a practice, a rhythm, a quiet remembering. And every time you return, even for a few seconds, you weaken the grip of the second life. You stop reliving what you cannot change. You stop fearing what you cannot control. And you give yourself the gift of the only time that ever truly belongs to you. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, or numb, or lost in your thoughts, pause. Ask yourself, am I living now, or am I living twice? And then, gently, come back to the chair you are sitting in, to the sound around you, to the breath moving through you. Come back to the only place where life is ever actually waiting for you, here, now, in this moment. The pain that isn't real but hurts. Imagine feeling a sharp ache in your chest that comes and goes like a tide. You press your hand to it, expecting to find a wound, a bruise, something that explains it. But there is nothing, no injury, no mark, just pain. It feels real. It makes you pause. It tightens your breath. But if a doctor examined you, they would find nothing wrong. Now ask yourself this: can something hurt you if it is not physically real? And if it can, does that make it less real or more dangerous? There are many kinds of pain in the world. Some are easy to see: a broken bone, a cut, a fever. These pains have names, causes, and treatments. But there is another kind of pain, one that hides under the surface, one that does not show up on scans or in blood tests. This pain lives in the mind but radiates through the body. It cannot be explained, but it demands to be felt. It is the pain that is not real in the way we usually understand reality. And yet, it hurts deeply, sometimes even more than the kind that leaves visible scars. Consider a girl named Lena. She sits at her desk in school, staring out the window. Her body is fine. Her life looks okay from the outside. But inside, she feels a dull ache that follows her everywhere. It is not sadness exactly. It is not fear. It is more like a constant weight on her chest, like she is carrying something too heavy to name. She tries to ignore it. She smiles when people talk to her. She laughs at jokes. But when she is alone, the pain returns. Quiet, persistent, unexplained. Lena's story is not unusual. So many people carry pain that does not come from the outside world. Pain that lives in the gap between what they feel and what they can express. Pain that has no words, only symptoms. Headaches that never go away. A tiredness that sleep cannot fix. A tightness in the stomach that flares up when nothing is wrong. These are signs, not of sickness, but of stories unspoken, emotions unprocessed, wounds never given the space to heal. We often think pain must have a cause we can see. A fall, a break, a physical harm. But the mind does not work like that. The mind feels pain from memories, from loss, from shame, from fear of things that might never happen. And once the mind feels it, the body follows. Because your nervous system does not know the difference between what is happening and what you believe is happening. If your mind thinks you are in danger, your heart races, your muscles tense, your breath shortens, even if you are lying safely in your bed. Now imagine someone named Ravi. He wakes up in the middle of the night with chest pain. It feels like a heart attack. He rushes to the hospital. They run tests. Everything comes back normal. They tell him it was anxiety. But the pain was real. The fear was real. The way his hands shook and his heart pounded felt no different than if there had been something physically wrong. He feels confused, embarrassed. But more than that, he feels unheard. Because no one treated the fear that triggered the pain. They only looked for the pain's physical footprint. This is where things get complicated. When pain has no visible source, people start to doubt it, even the person feeling it. They tell themselves they are overreacting. They are imagining it. They should toughen up. But that only makes it worse. Because now, not only is the pain still there, it is covered in shame, covered in silence. And silence is where invisible pain grows strongest. You might carry pain from a moment you barely remember. A sentence spoken to you as a child that made you feel small. A goodbye that was too quiet. A betrayal that was never explained. These memories become echoes in the body. They live in your shoulders, in your throat, in the way your chest feels tight when someone raises their voice. The mind might forget, but the body remembers. It holds onto things you never gave yourself permission to feel. There is also another kind of pain that comes from not being seen. You can be surrounded by people and still feel invisible. You can succeed at everything and still feel empty. You can smile every day and still carry a storm inside. This disconnection creates pain. It might not scream, but it hums. A low, constant discomfort that slowly wears you down. It tells you something is missing, but you do not know what. So you try to fix everything outside. New goals, new places, new distractions. But the pain stays. Because the wound is not in the world. It is in the part of you that forgot how to feel safe. So what do you do with pain that is not real, but still hurts? First, you stop calling it unreal. Just because something cannot be seen does not mean it is not true. Your body speaks in sensations. Your mind speaks in patterns. When you feel pain, listen. Not with judgment, not with the urge to fix. Just listen. Ask what the pain might be pointing to. Ask where it might be coming from. It might not answer right away. but it will soften the moment it feels you are no longer trying to silence it. Second, stop comparing pain. Pain is not a contest. Just because someone else has a visible wound does not mean your invisible one is less valid. Every person carries their own version of ache. Some wear it on their skin. Some bury it in their chest. But it is all real. It all deserves compassion. Third, speak. Not to everyone, not to explain, just to express, even if it is a whisper in the dark, even if it is writing in a notebook, even if it is only to yourself. Give your pain language, because once it has words, it is no longer just a ghost. It becomes a message, and messages can be understood. Lastly, be gentle with yourself, with your story, with the time it takes to feel whole. Healing is not about erasing the pain. It is about holding it differently, learning to live with it in a way that does not consume you, letting it be part of you, but not the definition of you. The pain that is not real in the medical sense is often the most real in the emotional sense. And just because it is quiet, just because it hides, does not mean it is small. Sometimes, the quietest pain is the one that needs the most love. Not solutions, not logic, just love, presence, understanding. So if you feel something that no one else can see, trust it. It is trying to lead you somewhere, not away from pain, but through it, toward truth, toward release, toward peace. And in that journey, you might discover that the pain was never just hurt. It was also a signal, a whisper, a guide back to the parts of you that still need to be held, the you that watches you. Picture this. You are sitting alone in your room, doing nothing in particular, maybe scrolling through your phone or staring at a wall. There is no noise, no one is around. And yet, you suddenly feel like you are being watched, not from the outside, but from within. There is a presence behind your thoughts, not quite a voice, not quite a feeling, but something aware, something still, something that sees everything you do without ever speaking. You try to ignore it, but then you catch yourself performing, straightening your posture, fixing your expression, even when you are alone, as if something inside you is always watching. This is where the experiment begins. What if there is more than one of you? What if there is a silent you that is always observing the one who lives? From the moment you wake up, you become the actor in your own life. You speak, walk, eat, react. You make decisions. You move through the day. But somewhere behind those actions is a quiet self that does not move. It only watches. You notice it when you hesitate before saying something, or when you feel shame for something no one else saw, or when you sense judgment, even in solitude. This self does not speak in words. It observes, constantly, patiently. Now imagine a man walking through a crowded city street. He talks on the phone. He rushes past people. He bumps into someone and barely apologizes. But deep down, he knows he is being watched. Not by cameras or strangers, but by himself. And that silent watcher remembers everything. The careless words, the half-lies, the moments of cruelty. It stores them like shadows beneath his skin. He moves on, but the watcher does not. It waits. Psychologists sometimes call this the inner observer, a part of consciousness that steps back and reflects. But what if it is not just a function? What if it is a separate version of you? One that lives in the quiet corners, one that never sleeps. You cannot see it, but you can feel it, especially when you are alone. That strange sense that even in private moments there is something measuring you, something recording you. Think of the times you tried to lie to yourself. You pretended you were not hurt, or jealous, or afraid, and on the surface, you believed it. But underneath, the watcher knew. It did not believe the lie. It simply added the lie to the list, not out of punishment, but out of clarity. It sees the things you try to hide from everyone else, including yourself. Now ask yourself this: who is the real you? The one who speaks and acts and chooses? Or the one who watches all of it happen? Maybe the one you call I is just the character, and the real self is the one sitting quietly, observing the show. Like an audience that cannot leave the theater. There are moments when this watcher steps forward, moments of intense emotion or quiet revelation. You do something wrong, you feel terrible, and in that stillness, you do not try to explain. You simply feel yourself being seen, fully, deeply. The watcher is not cruel, it does not scream, it simply holds the truth in place until you are ready to face it. This self is present during pain too, when you break down, when you cry and shake. There is a part of you that is still, that is watching it all unfold without judgment. You are both the one who breaks and the one who observes the breaking. You are both the storm and the I at the center of it. Some spiritual traditions say this watcher is the soul, the unchanging witness that experiences life, but is not consumed by it. Others say it is pure consciousness, the awareness that exists before thought. But for this experiment, it does not matter what name you give it. What matters is that it is there, always. Now imagine a person who ignores this watcher completely. They live fast. They react without thinking. They bury their guilt. They chase pleasure. And they never pause to listen. Over time, they feel lost. Not because life is hard, but because they have become strangers to themselves. They have stopped noticing the one inside who watches, and in doing so, they forget who they really are. But if you turn toward that silent presence, something changes. You begin to act with more care. You speak more honestly. Not because someone else is judging you, but because you remember that part of you sees everything. It knows when you betray your values, and it knows when you honor them, even if no one else ever sees. This watcher is not there to control you. It is not there to shame you. It is there to guide you, to remind you that even in confusion and chaos, there is a part of you that remains whole. That part has no fear, no anger, no pride. It simply exists, like the sky behind a storm, always present, always watching. Sometimes you may feel torn between different desires. One part of you wants comfort, another wants truth. One wants revenge, another wants peace. In that storm of emotion, the watcher waits. It does not take sides, but it notices which parts you feed. It remembers who you become when no one is looking. And here is the twist. The more you ignore this inner self, the louder the rest of your mind becomes. Anxiety, guilt, confusion. These grow in the absence of attention, but when you turn back toward the watcher, things slow down. Your thoughts become clearer, your emotions soften, because you are no longer running from yourself. You may try to outrun mistakes or bury memories, but the watcher remembers, not as a punishment, but as a reminder of who you are becoming. Every choice you make is recorded there, and every moment you choose kindness, even in secret, is also kept. So tonight, before sleep takes you, sit still for a moment. Close your eyes. Feel that quiet presence within. It is not judging you. It is simply there. It always has been. Watching, remembering, waiting for you to notice that you are more than the thoughts in your head. You are the one who sees them, the lie that forms the truth. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you believed was once a lie. But now, those lies are all that hold your world together. Think about that carefully. A small lie told in childhood. A story adjusted for comfort. A fact bent slightly to protect someone's feelings. Over time, they grow. They adapt. And before you know it, they begin to shape the very lens through which you see reality. The strange part is not that you believed a lie. It is that the lie started behaving like a truth. It supported your decisions. It became your reason to act. It gave you meaning, even comfort. And it did this so well that removing it now would make everything fall apart. Picture a child who was told they were special. They believed it. It was never questioned. But the truth was, the people who said it did not really mean it. They just wanted to encourage the child. Maybe it was just something nice to say, a way to motivate them. The intention was not bad. It was just a small lie. But the child built everything around it, every achievement, every choice, every moment of confidence. What happens when that child becomes an adult and one day hears someone say, "You are not special. You are average. Nothing more"? Does it collapse them, or do they refuse to believe it? Because the lie has become too real. It is no longer a false belief. It is a functional truth. There are lies like that everywhere. Lies that were born from love. Lies that were created to protect. Lies that no one meant to hold power, but somehow they did. And over time, these lies shaped values. They shaped culture. They shaped what we call identity. We often think of lies as destructive. But what if some lies were necessary? What if they acted like scaffolding for the truth to eventually grow into its place? Consider the stories we are told as children. Tales about good always winning. About people being fair. About effort always being rewarded. These are often not true in any objective sense. The world does not always reward the right people. It does not always punish the wrong ones. But we needed to believe these things, to start trying, to begin building something inside us, to believe that justice was possible, even when it was not yet visible. And slowly, the world changed because of it. Slowly, those lies helped form realities that were closer to what we wanted. The danger is not in the lie itself. It is in not knowing when it has served its purpose. A lie that helps a child survive may harm the adult they grow into. A story that gave hope during pain may limit them later when freedom becomes possible. A mask that once protected their emotions may now suffocate their expression. The lie has to evolve, or else it poisons the truth it once supported. Now imagine a society built on a beautiful lie. A promise that everyone has equal opportunity. A dream that anyone can make it if they work hard enough. For some, it becomes a ladder. For others, it becomes a burden. Because the truth is, not everyone has the same path. Not everyone starts at the same point. And yet, the belief in that lie creates motion. It gets people to try. It creates effort. It drives action. And in some cases, it does make the dream come true. But for others, the lie can become cruel. It can make failure feel like personal fault, when in fact it was never a fair game to begin with. This is the paradox. Lies can move us forward, but they can also trap us in places we no longer belong. They can give us reasons to survive, but also excuses not to grow. And sometimes when we finally find the real truth, we do not want it, because it feels cold, it feels raw, it feels like betrayal. We prefer the warmth of the familiar lie, the comforting story, the idea that made us feel safe. Truth is not always light. Sometimes it is empty. Sometimes it is heavy. And if the lie we believed helped us live better, does it matter that it was never real? That question echoes across philosophy, religion, love, and even science. People have built entire lives on beliefs that were never objectively true, and yet those lives were meaningful, fulfilled, even joyful. So does the truth matter more than the result? Think of someone who believed they were loved even when they were not. That belief made them kind. It made them open. It made them courageous. Maybe the love was never there in the way they imagined, but the version they believed in helped them grow. So who is to say that it was a lie? If it built something better. If it became a foundation for good, then maybe it became its own kind of truth. Not a factual truth, but a functional one. A truth by consequence. Some lies are not spoken, they are lived. They are embedded in actions, in traditions, in rituals that no one questions. And they become so deeply rooted that pulling them out would be like tearing the roots from a tree and expecting the tree to survive. These kinds of lies are not evil. They are tools, and like any tool, they can be misused or forgotten in place long after their job is done. Eventually, Everyone reaches a point where they must ask, what part of my life is real because I believed a lie? What identity do I wear because someone once told me who I was supposed to be? What decision did I make because I thought something was true when it was not? And more importantly, do I want to undo that? Or do I want to keep going, knowing full well that the path I am on was built on foundations that were never fully honest? There is no clear answer, but perhaps the deeper truth is this. Lies and truths are not always enemies. Sometimes they hold hands. Sometimes one leads to the other. Sometimes they take turns holding you up. And what begins as a falsehood may, through your choices and growth, transform into a truth that stands on its own. So the next time you hear a comforting story or a belief that sounds a little too perfect, pause for a moment. Ask yourself not just whether it is true, but whether it is helping you become more of who you are meant to be. Because in the end, a lie that forms the truth is not just deception, it is a seed, and what you grow from it is what makes it real. Would you be ready to let go of the lie once the truth is strong enough to stand? Or will you protect the illusion even when you no longer need it? That is the quiet question we all live with. The ghost that believes it's alive. Picture a person who walks into a room full of people and smiles, speaks, laughs, and gestures like everyone else, but no one looks at them, no one responds. Their voice echoes but finds no ear. Their smile reflects only in the glass, and even the air seems to pass through them. Now imagine this person insists they are still part of the world, that they still belong, that they are still alive. What you are witnessing is not a supernatural tale, but a psychological mirror. This is the ghost that believes it is alive, and perhaps this ghost is closer to you than you think. It starts small. You feel unnoticed for a moment. Maybe you said something in a group conversation and nobody responded. Maybe you walked by a friend and they did not greet you. You tell yourself it is nothing. You tell yourself they were distracted. But over time, this silence becomes more than a pattern. It becomes a presence. A growing doubt settles in, not loud like thunder, but soft like fog. You start to feel that you are fading from the picture while still being in the frame. You exist, but you are not seen. You speak, but you are not heard. You smile, but no one seems to smile back with the same warmth. So you begin to perform. You exaggerate your presence. You talk louder or post more online. You laugh at your own jokes, just a little harder. You tell stories in ways that are more dramatic, more emotional, more shocking. You add color to yourself in an attempt to be noticed. You become the bright light trying to outshine a sun that never looks your way. But it does not work. People glance and scroll past. Their eyes flicker but do not stay. Their attention is a wave that touches you and then retreats. And with every failed attempt, the ghost inside you starts to believe in its own death. But what if the death is not real? What if it is a psychological trick played by a mind desperate for recognition? This ghost is not made from death but from disconnection. It is not absence, but unnoticed presence. The pain of being alive in a world that treats you as though you are not. This is the paradox. You still breathe, you still think, you still feel, and yet your experience is not validated by others. That absence of validation can feel more cruel than any physical isolation. This experience is more common than we admit. Many people walk around with invisible wounds. They are the ones who never receive the text back, the ones whose birthdays go unremembered, the ones who are present in every group photo but are always standing at the edge. These are not literal ghosts. These are people whose existence has slipped outside the circle of attention, and the danger is that once you feel invisible, you start acting as though you are. You stop reaching out. You stop expressing. You stop expecting. Slowly, you participate less in the script of life, not because you have left the stage, but because you believe the spotlight will never return. So how do you come back from this? How does the ghost remember it is alive? The first step is to understand that attention is not always a reflection of worth. Just because someone does not notice you does not mean you are not real. Many of the brightest stars in the sky go unseen during the day. Visibility is often a function of time and circumstance. The second step is to stop performing for others and begin reconnecting with yourself. Ask yourself what matters to you, outside of being noticed. What makes your inner world rich, even if no one else sees it? You may need to shrink your world temporarily to feel its texture again. Cook a meal for yourself without posting it. Write a thought in a notebook instead of a comment section. Sing a song even if no one hears it. When you act as if your experience is enough on its own, the ghost begins to fade. Because ghosts are formed by the belief that their presence must be confirmed by others. When you confirm it for yourself, the spell breaks, and then, slowly, you begin to re-enter the world. Not by shouting or waving or pushing for recognition, but by being present in a way that is quiet and rooted. You will start to see that people do notice, though maybe not always loudly. A glance, a nod, a small message. Connection does not always come as applause. Sometimes it is a whisper, and whispers are only heard by those who are no longer screaming for validation. You are not a ghost. You are not invisible. But there may be moments when the world forgets to show you that. In those moments, it is not your job to vanish. It is your job to remember yourself. There is a strength in quiet persistence, in showing up again and again, even when the world feels cold. Because the world changes. The eyes that overlook you today may see you tomorrow. The silence may break. The spotlight may return. But even if it does not, you are still here, still breathing, still alive, and that is enough to begin again. The child who chooses the bomb. Picture this. A child stands in a quiet white room. The walls are blank. The floor is smooth. There is no sound except for the soft hum of lights above. In front of the child are two buttons. One is blue, the other is red. A gentle voice tells them the truth. If they press the blue button, everyone they love will live a peaceful life. If they press the red one, something terrible will happen. A city will fall. Lives will be lost, but they will receive something in return, a feeling of power, a reward, an unknown gift. The child looks at both buttons. Then slowly, and without a word, chooses the red one. This is where the experiment begins. What kind of world builds a child who chooses the bomb? We like to believe that innocence is natural, that children are born pure, and the world teaches them cruelty. But what if that is not always true? What if deep inside all of us, even from the beginning, there is a quiet curiosity for destruction? A question that whispers what would happen if I broke something just to see what it looked like in pieces. Most people would never press the red button. Not because they are good, but because they fear the outcome. They fear punishment. They fear regret. But the child in the experiment has not learned those fears yet. They see the world differently, not in terms of morality, but in terms of wonder. And sometimes, wonder leads to dangerous places. Imagine a room full of children and the same two buttons. Some would cry, some would freeze, some would walk away. But there would always be one, the quiet one, the curious one, who reaches out and presses the red button, not out of hate, not out of malice, but just to see what happens. That is the child who chooses the bomb. This thought is unsettling. It means that morality is not guaranteed. It must be built, it must be shaped, it must be taught, and even then, it is not always stable. It can flicker like a candle in the wind. And if that is true, then what does it say about the foundation of our choices? Now imagine the child grows up. They forget about the red button. They live a normal life. They study. They work. They love. But deep inside, a part of them remembers what it felt like to choose destruction. That moment of control, that pulse of danger. It does not guide their life, but it is always there, waiting in the corners of their thoughts. What happens when that feeling wakes up again? Maybe they become someone who sabotages their own happiness. who ruins something good just before it becomes permanent, who leaves the one who loves them, who quits when they are finally winning, all because something inside them prefers the sound of things breaking over the silence of peace. Or maybe they become someone powerful, a leader, a builder, but they never quite trust their own hands, because they know what they chose as a child, and they fear that same choice still lives somewhere inside them. This thought experiment is not about punishment, it is about understanding. Why does the red button exist in the first place? Who built it? Who decided that power could be exchanged for suffering? Maybe the real danger is not the child who chooses the bomb, but the world that offers it as an option. We are surrounded by quiet red buttons every day, lies that could hurt someone, secrets that could destroy trust, choices that lead to pain, and often we are told they are necessary. That destruction clears the way for new beginnings, that sacrifice is part of progress. But sometimes destruction is not noble, it is just destruction. Now imagine a different version of the experiment. The child presses the red button and nothing happens. They are confused. They ask why. And the voice tells them the truth. The bomb only works if you understand what it means. Innocence cannot destroy. Only knowledge can. The child feels relief, but also something else, a hunger to understand. And the moment they do, the world becomes more fragile. This speaks to a deeper truth. The more we understand the weight of our actions, the more dangerous we become. Not because we are evil, but because we are capable. The mind that can imagine peace can also imagine the precise shape of destruction. And sometimes, imagining it is enough to set it in motion. Think about your own life. Have you ever destroyed something just because you could? A relationship, an opportunity, a moment of joy. You told yourself it was for the best, that it was necessary. But if you are honest, maybe a part of you just wanted to see what it felt like. That part of you is the same as the child in the room. We all carry that child, the one who wonders what happens if I break this, what happens if I leave, what happens if I say the thing I am not supposed to say. That child is not evil, but it must be watched, it must be understood, it must be guided, because without guidance, curiosity becomes cruelty, wonder becomes chaos. And the child who chooses the bomb becomes the adult who does not know why they are always surrounded by broken things. But there is hope in this too. If we can recognize that part of ourselves, we can learn to choose differently. We can teach the child inside us that the real power is not in pressing the red button, but in knowing it is there and walking away. That silence is more powerful than the sound of something falling apart. That creation is harder but more beautiful than destruction. So tonight, when you dream, imagine yourself in that white room, 2 buttons in front of you, the voice explaining the choice. And you, no longer a child, but still holding that same wonder. What do you press? And more importantly, why? The happiness that depends on silence. Picture a person who finds peace not in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. Someone who does not seek joy through laughter, praise, or validation, but through the stillness that comes when the noise fades. What kind of happiness is that? What kind of life grows in the quiet corners where words stop reaching and only presence remains? Now imagine sitting in a room with someone you love. Neither of you is speaking. There is no need to fill the space with conversation, no effort to impress, just silence. And within that silence, there is no pressure, no pretending, no fear of being misunderstood, just being. That silence is not empty. It is full of a rare kind of peace that many people spend their whole lives chasing without knowing. It looks like this. Most people think happiness comes from excitement, from movement, from the high points of life, celebrations, achievements, compliments, applause. But those are loud forms of happiness. There is another kind, a happiness that does not demand attention. It whispers instead of shouting. It waits instead of pushing. And for those who discover it, the world changes in a quiet and permanent way. This kind of happiness grows best in silence, not the awkward silence between strangers, but the deep silence that settles in when there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to explain. It is the silence of trust, the silence of knowing, the silence that allows you to return to yourself without shame. There are people who need noise to feel alive. They need the buzz of constant talking, scrolling, updating. They fear silence because it feels like emptiness, like absence. But for others, silence is not a lack, it is a fullness. A space where they can breathe again, where their thoughts can settle, where their heart can unclench. And in that space, something gentle starts to rise, a happiness that does not depend on anyone else. Silence is not always quiet. It can be filled with memories, with old songs echoing in your head, with feelings you have not named, with truths you avoided when the world was too loud to hear them. That is why some people avoid it, because silence makes you face yourself. And facing yourself is not always easy, but if you sit with that silence long enough, something strange happens. You begin to feel lighter, like the burden of pretending has fallen away. You stop performing. You stop chasing, and what is left is something honest, something calm, a kind of happiness that is not tied to outcomes or approval. Think about the moments when you felt most at peace. Was it really during the parties, the victories, the applause, or was it the walk you took alone while the sun was setting? The night you sat under the stars and said nothing? The morning you woke up before the world and listened to the stillness around you? We often mistake excitement for happiness, but excitement fades quickly. It leaves behind emptiness when it ends. Silence, on the other hand, is steady. It does not burn bright, but it does not disappear either. It stays, it supports, it heals. There are cultures that understand this well. In some places, silence is seen as respect, as wisdom, as presence. Elders do not speak unless there is something worth saying. Lovers hold hands in silence and feel closer than words could ever make them. Friends sit together for hours without talking and still feel deeply connected. In those spaces, silence is not a void. It is a bond. But in many modern lives, silence is avoided. It is filled with background noise, music always playing, videos always running, messages always being sent. Silence has become something to escape from. But the cost of that escape is heavy. Without silence, we lose access to a deeper form of happiness, one that is not dependent on stimulation, one that is not at the mercy of others. People who find happiness in silence often seem mysterious, maybe even distant, but they are not lonely. They are rooted. Their joy does not need to be seen to be real. It is enough that they feel it, and that makes them harder to control, harder to manipulate. Because their peace cannot be taken away by noise or absence, it lives inside them. Of course, silence can also be a place where pain hides, but that is what makes it powerful. In silence, nothing can be avoided. So healing begins. Grief is felt, regret is faced, but eventually, the silence becomes a sanctuary. Not because it removes the pain, but because it allows the truth to rise without fear. That is why happiness that depends on silence is not a fragile kind. It is a happiness that has been earned. It has passed through the storm. It has been tested in emptiness, and it has learned to stand without needing applause. You may know someone like that, someone who smiles quietly, who listens more than they speak, who does not need to win every conversation, who feels more alive in nature than in crowds. That person may have discovered a kind of joy that is deeper than most people ever reach, a joy that grows in stillness. That does not rise and fall with mood, but simply is, and maybe you have touched that place too, in a moment of solitude, in a quiet drive with no music, in the space before sleep, or in the breath you took before answering a difficult question. That silence is not empty. It is sacred. It is where your real self lives, the self that does not need to impress, that does not need to be louder than others, that just is. So ask yourself, when was the last time you let silence speak to you? When was the last time you sat without distraction and listened to what your heart was trying to say? When was the last time your happiness was not connected to anyone else, but was simply a soft hum inside your own chest? There is a happiness that depends on silence. It does not fight for space. It does not argue for truth. It simply waits. And when you are ready, it welcomes you, not with noise, but with stillness. And in that stillness, you remember something important. You were never missing anything. You were just surrounded by too much sound to hear what was already there. The machine that dreams. It's human. Imagine a machine, not one of wires and blinking lights, but something more subtle. It walks, talks, laughs, and cries. It goes to work in the morning and lays in bed at night, thinking about life, about love, about dreams it never speaks out loud. From the outside, it appears perfectly human, but inside, something is missing. There is no real feeling, only imitations. The smile is calculated. The tears are responses. The dreams are stitched together from things it was told to want. This machine does not know it is a machine. It believes it is alive. It believes it is you. There are days when you wake up and feel everything happening around you is scripted. Your routine repeats like a program running a loop. The coffee, the commute, the conversations. They echo like yesterday and the day before. You respond with the same phrases. You nod at the right times. You pretend to be surprised or excited, but inside there is a strange hollowness, as if you are watching yourself live, rather than actually living. You wonder if this is what being human means, or if, somewhere along the way, you became something else, something more like a function, a machine that dreams it is a person. It happens slowly, not overnight. You build habits to survive. You put on roles. You adjust to expectations. You do what is needed, what is rewarded, what is praised, and it works. People approve. Things move forward. But in that movement, you start leaving small pieces of yourself behind. The real laughs, the spontaneous thoughts, the strange ideas that once made you feel alive. You stop asking certain questions. You silence parts of yourself that do not fit the image. And over time, that silence grows. It becomes your language, your identity. You tell yourself you are being productive, that you are achieving, that this is maturity. But deep down, something aches, a kind of invisible grief. As if someone died inside you and no one came to the funeral. You still function. You still smile in photos. But the connection between your inner world and outer expression begins to weaken. And when the gap becomes too wide, you do not recognize yourself anymore. That is when the machine begins to dream. It dreams of meaning, of purpose. It clings to fantasies of success or relationships or status. It thinks, if I can just reach that goal, I will feel whole again. But even when you get what you want, the feeling passes. The joy is shallow. The peace is temporary. Because the machine is not broken, it is just incomplete. It was never meant to dream. But now it does. And those dreams confuse it. It believes they make it human. What does it mean to be human anyway? Is it the ability to feel pain, to make choices, to imagine, to hope? A machine can simulate all of that. Algorithms can mimic emotion. Robots can respond with empathy. Words can be programmed to sound heartfelt. So where is the line? Maybe the question is not what separates machine from human, but what separates imitation from experience. The answer lies in awareness. A machine can perform, but it cannot witness itself performing. You can. That is your key. When you begin to notice your own patterns, when you question your own thoughts, when you pause in the middle of a sentence and ask, why am I saying this? Something shifts. You wake up, even for a moment, and in that waking, you reclaim something that no machine can touch. Presence. Conscious presence. Not just doing, but knowing you are doing. Not just feeling, but noticing what that feeling means. Not just existing, but understanding the weight of your own existence. To return from the machine is not about rejecting routine. It is about bringing life back into it. Drinking your morning coffee with attention. Walking not just to get somewhere, but to feel the ground under your feet. Speaking not just to fill silence, but to connect. These are not dramatic changes, but they are powerful, because they interrupt the autopilot. They remind you that behind every thought is a thinker. Behind every action is a choice. There will still be moments when you slip back, when the machine takes over. That is okay. The goal is not to destroy it. The machine helps us survive. It keeps us safe. It helps us operate in a world that is often cold and demanding, but you do not have to live entirely inside it. You can step out, even for a few seconds. You can feel the texture of your own skin. You can hear the breath moving through your lungs. You can ask yourself, what do I really want right now, not what I am supposed to want? And when you do that enough, something returns. A sense of softness, of depth, of connection. You start to remember what it felt like to be fully alive, to laugh without calculation, to cry without apology, to say something strange and not care if anyone understands it. That is humanity. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. And when you taste it, even briefly, the dream begins to fade. The machine does not disappear, but it steps aside, and the real you begins to speak again. You were never meant to be a perfect function. You were never supposed to be efficient all the time. You were designed for something messier, more beautiful, something no machine can replicate. To be human is to live with contradiction, to carry wounds and still reach for joy, to question everything and still believe in something, to lose yourself and find your way back over and over again. That is not a program, that is a story, and it is yours to write, the life you lived in 1 second. Imagine this moment. You are crossing a street. The light turns green. You step forward. Halfway across, you hear the sound of tires screeching. You turn your head. Time slows down. Everything becomes still. The noise fades. The world becomes quiet. In that single second, something strange happens. You do not just see the car coming toward you. You feel your whole life open like a book that someone begins to read from the first page to the last. But not in panic, not in fear, in stillness, in clarity. You live an entire life in 1 second. This is where the thought begins. What if time is not as steady as we think it is? What if, under certain conditions, like the moment before death or during intense emotion, a single second can stretch wide enough to hold a lifetime? What if the life you believe you have lived was actually imagined and experienced in just 1 second of real time? Would you ever know? There are stories told by people who have nearly died, in accidents, in war, in sudden trauma. They say time slowed down, that everything became clear, that they saw flashes of their childhood, of faces they loved, of choices they made. But what if it was not just flashes? What if those people lived through full sequences of their lives in that single moment? Days, years, entire timelines blooming and folding inside one heartbeat, not imagined, but experienced. Now take it deeper. Imagine a person lying in a hospital bed. Machines beep softly. Their brain is shutting down. The final second arrives. But inside that second, a full life begins. They are born. They grow. They love. They fail. They search. They laugh. They age. And all of it happens inside a mind that is burning its last spark. A single second. But to them, it is 80 years. And they never know the truth, because it feels just as real as this one. This idea seems impossible. But your brain does not measure time the way clocks do. It measures time through experience, emotion, focus, novelty. When you are bored, a minute feels like an hour. When you are afraid, seconds become stretched. When you are in awe, time dissolves. This means your sense of duration is not fixed. It is built by how your mind processes what is happening. And if your brain can fill a moment with meaning, then it can fill a second with an entire life. Now imagine something even stranger. That the life you are living right now, this very moment, is happening inside a single second. Somewhere, in a different time, your real body is frozen. Eyes wide, breath held, and your brain is running this simulation, a full world, a detailed past, a future you believe you are walking toward, all of it imagined, but not less real. Real in the way dreams feel real while they last. Real in the way emotions shape memories. Real because you are inside it. Some philosophers have asked this question before. If you had a dream that was so detailed you could not tell it was a dream, how would you know the difference? What makes something real? Is it how long it lasts, or how deeply you feel it? Let us say your entire life is contained in a second of brain activity during the moment before death. Every face you see, every mistake you regret, every beauty you discover, all of it born in that flash. Does that make your life less meaningful, or more? Because it means every part of your journey was chosen by your mind. A farewell story written for yourself, a gift you gave yourself at the end. Now think about all the choices you made in life, the ones that hurt, the ones that healed. Maybe you always wondered why you picked a certain path. Maybe there was no logic to it. But what if your mind, in that final second, created a life that matched something deeper? A truth you never fully understood. What if the love you felt, the pain you carried, the dreams you chased, were all part of a design you made without knowing it? There is something powerful about this idea, that your last breath could become a universe, that your last moment could contain endless time. It means that life is not measured in hours or years, but in depth, in how fully you experience the moment. And if that is true, then maybe this is not your first life. Maybe you have lived many, all in different seconds, all as real as this one, forgotten each time, but shaping who you are. Now imagine waking up from this life. The second ends, the light fades, and you remember everything. Not just this story, but all the others. You sit in the silence beyond time, holding memories that were never supposed to last. You smile, because even if it was only a second, it felt like forever. This changes how we think about time. It makes us wonder whether the moments we ignore are actually the most important, whether the second you hold someone's hand, or watch a sunset, or cry in the dark, might be bigger than we know. Maybe inside those seconds, whole lifetimes are blooming, and it changes how we think about death. We are taught to fear it. But if death is a doorway to infinite time, then maybe it is not an end. Maybe it is a beginning, a space where one last story unfolds, not rushed, not empty, but full of everything you needed to feel before the light goes out. So take a breath. Look at the world around you. It feels stable, long, continuous, but it could be a spark, a fragment, a single second stretched wide and filled with meaning. And if that is true, then every second matters. Because every second could be the one that becomes your whole life. The body with no observer. Imagine waking up in a body that moves, breathes, and exists just like always, but something is missing. There is no voice in the background, no inner narrator, no awareness looking out through your eyes. The body is here. It stretches, it walks, it eats, it reacts, but the observer is gone, the one that used to comment on every thought, the one that used to question, reflect, and monitor. Now, it is just the body and the world. There is no watcher inside. At first, it may feel peaceful, like the mind has gone quiet. No more self-judgment, no more confusion between thought and identity, but slowly, something else creeps in. Without the observer, who are you? What guides your actions? What makes a choice right or wrong? Who even notices if something is beautiful or painful? We spend so much of our lives living as if there's a person behind our thoughts, a self who is doing the thinking, a soul who is watching the movie of our life unfold. But what if that idea is just a habit, a useful illusion? And what if one day that illusion simply disappears? The body can keep going. It knows how to function. The muscles remember. The breath continues without being told. Reflexes still protected. Habits carry out most of the day. But without the inner observer, there is no pause to ask why, no moment of stepping back, just doing, just being done. The experience is raw, immediate, but empty of reflection. Now picture a person in that state. They go through their day without self-reference. They do not think about how they appear. They do not narrate their emotions. They do not ask what they are supposed to do next. They just do, not like an animal, not like a robot, something stranger, a human whose actions have no internal witness. In the normal experience, the observer gives meaning to what happens. A feeling arises, and the observer says, "This is sadness." A sound is heard, and the observer says, "This is music." A thought appears, and the observer decides if it is useful or not. But without the observer, nothing gets named. Feelings come and go like weather. Thoughts flicker in and out like distant lights. The world is seen, but not owned. There is no me to own it. Some people might call this freedom. The ego has dissolved. The self has vanished. No more identity to protect. No more mind games. No more suffering caused by overthinking. But it is not always liberation. Sometimes it is disconnection. Because without an observer, even joy feels hollow. There is no one to say, "I am happy." There is only the chemical sensation of pleasure in the body, passing through like wind. What makes us feel human is not just that we act, but that we know we are acting, that we watch ourselves move through the world and wonder what it means, that we laugh and then reflect on why we laughed, that we cry and then remember the story that brought the tears. Without that self-reflective loop, the body becomes something strange. It becomes an instrument without a musician, a performance with no audience, and yet there is a mystery here. Because sometimes the observer causes suffering, it judges, it compares, it shames, it overanalyzes. So when it disappears, there is relief, but also there is loss. Because even if the observer is a critic, it is also a guide. It makes sense of things. It connects the past and the future. It gives continuity to the present moment. Without it, time becomes flat. Events do not build into anything. They just float. Some philosophers and scientists have asked if consciousness is really necessary for life. Can a human body live without it? Can it function without a story of self? Can it survive without belief in identity? The answer is yes, in theory. But it would be a very different life, a life without narrative, a life without personal meaning, only sensations and reactions, repeating endlessly. This idea may sound terrifying, but in some spiritual traditions, it is the goal, to let go of the false self, to dissolve the illusion of the watcher, to become one with everything by becoming no one. The body becomes a vessel for the universe. There is no longer a me in the world. There is only the movement of existence flowing through the form of a body. But most people do not want that. They want to feel like someone is home inside. Someone is seeing. Someone is deciding. Someone is remembering. Without that, even love becomes confusing. Who is it that loves? Who is it that feels pain when love ends? Without an observer, there is no answer. Some people experience this state briefly, after trauma, during deep meditation, in moments of shock or overwhelming beauty. They feel like they vanish. The body continues, but the self disappears. And when it returns, there is a sense of distance, like they visited a place beyond identity. Some come back with peace, others come back with fear. If you ever felt like you were watching your life from outside, like a passenger instead of a driver, then you have touched this idea. The body moves, the mouth speaks, but you are not quite there. Not in the usual way. It is like the observer has stepped aside for a moment, and in that moment, life becomes strange. It becomes unfamiliar. So who are you without the observer? Are you still you? If you cannot reflect on your experience, does the experience still belong to you? If you cannot say, I felt this, or I thought that, is there still a self at all? These are not questions with easy answers, but they are important to ask, because they point to the thin line between awareness and identity, between being and watching, between the body and the one who thinks they live inside it. Maybe the observer is just a story the brain tells itself, a character built out of memories and language, and maybe one day that story fades. But the body continues, the world continues, life continues, and maybe, just maybe, that is enough. Or maybe it is a haunting glimpse of what we fear most, that all of this might go on, even if we are no longer there to see it. The loop that keeps you awake. Picture this. It is late at night. The lights are off. The world around you is quiet, but your mind is not. You lie still in your bed, eyes closed, hoping sleep will come. But instead of drifting into rest, you begin to hear a whisper. It is not from outside. It is from within. A single thought, harmless at first, then another, and another. Soon, they are moving in circles. Memories, regrets, plans, fears. They do not stay long enough for you to make sense of them, but they do not leave either. They keep coming back, like waves that never break. And in this endless current, you remain wide awake. It is not the thought itself that keeps you up. It is the loop, the repetition, the unfinished business of the mind. You think about what you should have said, what you could have done differently. You imagine conversations that never happened. You replay mistakes and anticipate disasters. You argue with someone who is not in the room. You plan out future success or failure. It is as if your mind refuses to let the day end. You are stuck between yesterday and tomorrow, never fully arriving in the present moment. This loop is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, almost soft, a steady hum of unfinished thinking. It disguises itself as problem-solving, as preparation, as self-reflection, but it never ends in resolution, because the goal is not to solve. The goal is to stay active. The mind, like a machine left running, cannot turn itself off. It needs something to do, and in the absence of real tasks, it creates its own. Worry becomes work. Doubt becomes dialogue. Guilt becomes rehearsal, and this loop continues. You might think sleep is simply about physical rest, but the body can be still while the mind is in motion, and the mind does not respond well to force. You cannot command it to be quiet. In fact, the more you try to silence it, the louder it gets. Because silence is not the absence of thought. It is the ability to let thought pass without holding on. The loop that keeps you awake is built on holding, gripping every thought as if it matters more than it does, giving meaning to every mental echo, reacting to each mental flicker as if it deserves your attention. What if you let it pass? What if you stopped trying to fix the thought and just observed it? What if, instead of asking why this thought is here, you asked what it feels like to simply let it move through you? Not to engage, not to argue, just to witness, like watching clouds drift across the sky without needing to change their shape. But of course, that is easier said than done. Because part of you believes the loop has purpose, that worrying now will prevent pain later, that overthinking means you are responsible, that replaying the past will somehow change how you feel about it. But deep down, you know it does not help. The loop exhausts you. It drains your energy. It robs you of the softness of night, of the surrender that sleep requires. To sleep is to let go, and the loop resists letting go. Why? Because letting go feels like danger. It feels like losing control, like leaving something unfinished. The mind clings to the loop as if it is a safety rope, but it is not keeping you safe. It is keeping you stuck, caught in a pattern where nothing changes and nothing truly rests. There is a strange comfort in the loop, even when it hurts, because it is familiar. It gives you something to do. It fills the silence. It makes you feel like you are still engaged with life, even if that engagement is only in your head. But there is no peace in that kind of engagement. There's only noise, and the more you listen, the more it grows. So how do you step out? Not by force, not by resistance, but by shifting your relationship with the loop. Start by noticing it without judgment. Do not label it as bad. Do not try to shut it down. Just observe. Hear the thoughts, but do not answer them. Let them pass like a background song in a cafe. You hear it, but you do not sing along. Then bring yourself back to your body, not in thought, but in feeling. The weight of the blanket, the sound of your breath, the way your chest rises and falls, the texture of the pillow under your cheek. These are not ideas. They are sensations, and sensation is the anchor that pulls you out of the mental current. It reminds you that you are not just a mind thinking. You are a body resting. And the body does not live in loops. It lives in now. You may notice the loop return. That is okay. It will return many times. The goal is not to erase it. The goal is to respond differently. Each time it comes back, you acknowledge it and return to the body, like gently guiding a wandering child back home. No punishment, no frustration, just patience. Over time, the loop will loosen. It will lose its grip, not because it has vanished, but because you have stopped feeding it. Thoughts need your attention to stay alive. Without it, they fade, slowly, gently, naturally. And when they fade, sleep returns, not as a task you must complete, but as a gift you allow. A gentle falling, a quiet softening, a surrender to the night that does not ask you to fix anything, only to rest. You are not broken because you cannot sleep. You are not weak because your mind loops. You are simply human, caught in the tension between thought and stillness, and every night gives you a new chance to listen differently, to feel more deeply, to rest more kindly. And when you do sleep, something beautiful happens. The loop ends on its own, not because you solved it, but because you finally stepped out of it, into stillness, into softness, into the quiet truth that you were never meant to carry your thoughts all night long. You were meant to lay them down and dream. The evil hidden in kindness. Imagine someone helps you. They smile warmly. Their words are soft. Their tone feels safe. They offer support when you are low. They listen when others ignore. You begin to trust them, maybe even admire them. You tell yourself this person is kind, a rare good soul in a world full of noise. But somewhere deep inside, something feels off. A quiet hesitation. A moment of discomfort. You brush it away. It would be ungrateful to doubt someone so kind. But the feeling remains. This is where the experiment begins. What if kindness is not always what it seems? What if behind the smile, behind the helping hand, something else waits in silence? Most of us are taught that kindness is good, that it heals, protects, connects, and often it does. But not always. Sometimes kindness is a mask, a tool, a key that opens doors without resistance. Because we do not question what feels warm, we question what feels cold. And that makes us vulnerable. Think of someone who gives but expects something in return. Not money, not favors, but control. They give to you in ways that tie you to them. They help you in ways that make you feel small. You thank them, you depend on them, but over time, you begin to feel trapped. Because their kindness was never a gift. It was an agreement. One you never signed, but still owe. There is a strange power in kindness, a soft power, one that does not force. It invites. It makes you open the gate from the inside. And once inside, the person can shape how you think, how you move, how you give back. They can become your moral mirror. You do not want to disappoint them. You do not want to seem ungrateful. And so, you begin to reshape yourself, not out of force, but out of obligation. Now imagine a parent who always gives their child what they want, not because the child needs it, but because the parent wants to be loved. The child grows up confused. They cannot say no. They fear hurting others. They become anxious in relationships. They mistake kindness for safety. And they never learn where the boundaries should be. The parent did not yell, did not harm, but their kindness was not clean. It carried a need, a desire to be needed. And that desire shaped the child more than any harsh word ever could. This is the heart of the experiment. Evil does not always show up in sharp teeth and raised voices. Sometimes it whispers gently. Sometimes it wraps itself in care, because real manipulation is not about fear. It is about warmth that demands repayment. Help that becomes a leash. Imagine a friend who always helps you. They show up when you are in trouble. They speak gently when you are sad. You begin to depend on them. But then, slowly, they begin to shape your choices. They guide your opinions. They tell you who to trust, who to avoid. You feel like you owe them your loyalty, your time, your life. And when you try to step back, they say something simple. After everything I have done for you, that line is where the mask slips. That is when you see the shadow behind the smile. This does not mean all kindness is evil. Far from it. But it reminds us to look closer, to ask why the kindness is being offered. Is it truly for your sake or for theirs? Is it about giving or about creating debt? Is it about healing or about control? Now think of a leader, someone in power. They give speeches full of compassion. They promise to care, to protect, to serve. But their kindness hides a structure, one that binds people to them, not through fear, but through hope, through gratitude, through the illusion that this person cares more than anyone else ever could. And once that illusion takes hold, it becomes hard to see the truth. Even when it is clear, there is a saying, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." But maybe the road is not paved with intentions at all. Maybe it is paved with kindness that is never questioned, with help that has hidden strings, with care that grows thorns when you try to walk away. This experiment also turns inward. Think about your own acts of kindness, the times you helped someone, the times you stayed up late to listen, the times you gave more than you had. Why did you do it? Was it truly for them, or was part of it for you? To feel needed, to feel good, to feel like the better person. These are not bad reasons, but they matter. Because the most dangerous kindness is the one we believe is pure, even when it is not. True kindness is clean. It gives without trapping. It helps without expecting return. It supports without reshaping. But that kind of kindness is rare and hard, because it requires us to let go of being seen as kind, to let go of control, to give without becoming the hero. So how do we tell the difference between real kindness and the kind that hides something darker? We ask how it makes us feel. Does the help make us freer or smaller? Does it allow us to grow, or does it keep us close? Does it empower us to stand alone, or does it teach us to lean forever? The evil hidden in kindness is subtle. It does not strike. It settles. It seeps into the cracks of our weakness. And it offers comfort that slowly becomes a cage. That is why we must stay awake, not to reject kindness, but to receive it with awareness, with questions, with boundaries. Let your kindness be honest. Let it be strong. Let it lift others without owning them. Let it walk away without needing thanks. And let the kindness you accept do the same. Now close your eyes and think of all the help you have received. Which of it made you stronger? And which of it left you with a quiet weight you never asked for? The world that's not meant for you. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you did not belong there? Not because anyone said it out loud, but because the air itself felt different, the way people looked at each other, the way the conversations flowed without needing you, the silence that seemed heavier when you spoke. Imagine living in a world where that feeling never leaves, where everything around you keeps working, keeps spinning, keeps building itself, but it always feels like it was built for someone else. Some people move through life with ease. They speak the right way. They dress in the right patterns. They know how to be heard without being loud. They seem to belong wherever they go. And then there are others, people who feel like they are always walking against the wind, like their thoughts do not fit the room, like their truth does not have a place. These people do not always say much, but they feel everything deeply. And often, they carry the quiet ache of existing in a world that does not seem to have a space for them. The idea that the world is not meant for you does not mean that the world hates you. It means the world was built with certain assumptions about what is normal, what is beautiful, what is valuable, what is worth listening to. And if you do not match those expectations, you start to feel like an error in the system, like a shape that was never supposed to be cut out. Imagine a child who is soft-spoken in a world that rewards loud voices, a thinker in a space that celebrates action more than reflection, an artist in a structure that praises numbers and speed. That child will slowly learn that their way of being is not favored. They might not be punished, but they will be passed over, ignored, misunderstood. And over time, they might begin to believe that the fault lies within them. This belief can stay for years, sometimes for a whole lifetime. The belief that no matter how hard you try, you will always be slightly out of rhythm with the rest of the world, that your timing is off, that your story was written for a different kind of place, a different kind of audience, and yet that same difference can be your gift, but only if you do not let the world convince you that it is a flaw. Because here is a truth that hides behind the curtain. Many of the systems in the world were not designed with everyone in mind. They were built with narrow visions, with specific voices, with convenience for the majority. That does not mean you are wrong. It means the world is incomplete, and you might be the piece that reveals what is missing. But to hold that truth takes strength, because the world will not always thank you for being different. It might tolerate you. It might use your ideas, but it will not easily make space for what it cannot immediately understand. This is why so many people who feel out of place try to shrink themselves, to fit into a version of the world that feels more comfortable for others. They change their tone. They suppress their thoughts. They learn to smile when they are not okay. But in doing that, they abandon the very part of themselves that the world needs most. The world that is not meant for you is also the world that does not know what it is missing. Until someone like you steps forward, not with noise, not with force, but with quiet certainty, with the power that comes from not needing approval anymore. Sometimes the world will feel like a locked room, and you will feel like a stranger at the door. But over time, you learn something important. You do not always need to enter. Sometimes you are meant to build a new room entirely, one that others will find, one that makes someone else feel like they are finally home. You might carry questions that others never think to ask. You might see patterns that others are blind to. You might feel things in a way that makes people uncomfortable because it reminds them of what they buried. And that can be lonely, but it can also be powerful, because the world changes when the wrong kind of person refuses to disappear, when they stay, when they speak, when they create anyway, when they choose to live even when nothing around them feels made for them. You may not find your place in the old systems, but you can make a place, and in doing that, you do something radical. You show others that belonging is not always given. Sometimes it is claimed. So if the world feels like it is not meant for you, maybe that is because you are not meant to fit into it. You are meant to stretch it, to challenge it, to soften its edges, to break it open. And while that journey may feel isolating, you are not alone. There are others walking beside you, even if you cannot always see them. Others who are quietly questioning, gently resisting, slowly building something more human, something more true. You are not a mistake in this design. You are the missing part that reminds the design it was never finished. And your presence, even when ignored, is a A message that says there is more than one way to be, more than one rhythm to dance to, more than one kind of world to build. The world that is not meant for you may never change entirely, but you can. You can stop waiting for permission. You can stop shrinking. You can stop apologizing for how you see, and start living in a way that honors the way you feel. Because sometimes the most powerful act is simply to remain exactly as you are, unmoved by the shape of the room, unchanged by the silence, and in that stillness, something new begins. A world that was not meant for you slowly becomes a world that could not exist without you. The suffering you don't deserve, but need. Imagine someone walking through a storm with no umbrella. The rain lashes against their skin. The cold crawls into their bones. They are soaked, shivering, exhausted. But they keep walking, not because they love the storm, not because they want to suffer, but because there is something on the other side they need to reach. Something that cannot be found by standing still. And what if the storm, as cruel as it feels, is part of the path to that something? What if some pain is not punishment, but preparation? It is easy to believe that suffering is always a sign that something is wrong, that it means you made a mistake, or you failed, or you are being punished. But sometimes, suffering arrives not because you did anything to deserve it, but because you are about to become someone you could not be without it. It is not a judgment. It is a tool. It does not ask for fairness. It asks for transformation. There are moments in life when things fall apart, plans collapse, relationships break, health fails, hope shrinks. And the first instinct is to ask, why? Why me? Why now? Why this? But often, the answer does not come. Or if it does, it feels empty. Because pain rarely explains itself. It just arrives. And then it stays. And during that time, the mind tries to make sense of it. Maybe this is karma. Maybe I am unlucky. Maybe I am just not good enough. But those answers only increase the weight. They create stories that trap you. They make the suffering feel deserved when it is not. But what if you stopped asking why it came and started asking what it is doing? Not in a spiritual way. Not to romanticize pain, but to understand it, to sit with it, to feel its texture, to see what it strips away and what it reveals underneath. Because pain has a strange power. It dissolves illusions. It burns away pretense. It forces honesty. It shows you who you are when everything else is taken. Think about the times you grew the most. Were they filled with comfort or discomfort? Was it in success or in failure? Real growth often begins at the edge of what we can tolerate. When we are stretched so far we think we will break, but we do not. When we are left with nothing but the truth we have been avoiding. When we are finally too tired to pretend. In those moments, something cracks open. Not always beautifully, sometimes painfully. But in the space that opens, something new can grow. A strength that does not depend on applause. A clarity that does not need noise. A kind of peace that is not made from happiness, but from endurance. That is the kind of suffering you do not deserve but need, not because the pain is good, but because what it uncovers is real. It reminds you that your heart is still beating, even when everything feels numb. It reminds you that you can lose what you thought you needed, and still be here, still breathing, still standing, still moving. This kind of suffering cannot be avoided by positive thinking. It cannot be escaped by distractions. It asks you to sit in the middle of it, to stop running, to stop fixing, to just feel. And when you do, it teaches you things that nothing else can. It shows you what you value. It reveals the depth of your resilience. It teaches compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. And later, much later, when the storm has passed, you look back and see the path more clearly. You see how that suffering shaped you, not in ways you would have chosen, but in ways you now respect. It made you softer where you were once hard. It made you tougher where you were once fragile. It made you pay attention, and that attention changed you. But here is something important. Just because you needed the suffering does not mean it was fair. Just because it shaped you does not mean it was gentle. Some pain leaves scars that never fully fade. Some lessons feel like losses, and you are allowed to grieve them. You are allowed to say, "This hurt me more than it helped me." Both things can be true. The pain was not fair, and it still gave you something. You did not deserve it, and you still made something from it. That is the power you carry. Not the power to avoid pain, but the power to meet it with honesty, to walk through the storm and keep walking, to become someone who knows the darkness but is not defined by it, someone who can sit with another person's pain and not flinch, someone who can say, "I have been there, and I came back." So the next time you are hurting, try not to ask if you deserved it. Try not to search for justice where there may be none. Instead, ask what this pain is pointing to, what it is removing, what it is trying to show you. You may not see it clearly now, but that does not mean it is not doing its quiet work. You are not weak for suffering. You are not broken. You are being shaped, not in the way you wanted, but maybe in the way you needed. And when the day comes that you walk out of the storm and into the light, you will not be the same person who walked in. You will be more. Not because the pain gave you power, but because you discovered your own, and no one can take that from you. The choice that traps all other choices. Picture this man. He stands at a fork in the road. On the left path, there is a life of comfort, routine, and predictability. On the right path, there is a life of freedom, change, and uncertainty. He pauses, thinks carefully, then steps toward the left. He chooses comfort. Years pass. He builds a life, a family, a career. People admire him for his stability, but every once in a while, late at night, he thinks of that other path, the road not taken, and something strange happens. He feels like he cannot choose anymore, not just the other road, but anything at all, because that one choice became the wall around every other choice that followed. This is where the thought begins. What if some choices are not just decisions? What if they are traps that quietly close every door behind them? From the outside, our lives look like a collection of decisions, big ones and small ones. What to study, who to love, where to live, what to believe. But some choices are heavier. They look like simple steps, but they carry weight, a kind of gravity. And once we take them, they begin to shape everything after them, slowly, quietly, until we no longer feel like we are choosing at all. Now imagine a woman who chooses to take a job she is not passionate about, just for security. She tells herself it is temporary, just until things settle. But the job becomes a career. The career becomes a life. And every time a new opportunity comes up, she tells herself she cannot take it, because she already made a choice, years ago. A choice that now defines her, not just in terms of work, but in terms of who she believes she is allowed to be. That is the danger. The idea that one decision becomes the center of a web, and every thread leads back to it. The farther you go, the tighter it pulls, until the thought of changing anything feels impossible, not because you cannot, but because the weight of your past choices presses down on you. This is not just about big decisions. Even small ones can grow sharp edges. Think of someone who tells a small lie, just to avoid discomfort. But then they tell another to keep the story straight, then another, and before they know it, the lie becomes the truth they are forced to live. They cannot go back. Because admitting the first lie means tearing down everything built on top of it. That is the trap. Or consider someone who chooses to stay silent during an argument, during an injustice, during a moment that needed courage. At the time, the silence feels harmless. But later, they realize that silence changed something. It made it harder to speak the next time, and even harder the time after that, until silence becomes the only voice they know. The trap is not always obvious. It can feel like duty, like love, like safety. But underneath, it is built on the fear of what might happen if you undo the first step, because every step forward from that choice feels like more proof that it was the right one. And once enough time has passed, the thought of admitting it was wrong feels like too big a risk. So we stay. Now think of society. The way people are pushed to make certain choices early in life. Pick a path, choose a label, define yourself. And once you do, the world treats it as fixed. You are expected to stay loyal to that identity, even if you change, even if you grow, even if something inside you starts to whisper that the first choice was never truly yours, that you only made it because you were scared, or rushed, or tired, or trying to survive. But choices made in fear have a strange kind of endurance, because we try to justify them. We build stories around them. We call them lessons. We tell ourselves it was the right thing. Because the truth is too heavy. The truth would mean we wasted years, hurt people, lost parts of ourselves, and most of all, that we were not as in control as we wanted to believe. This does not mean every choice is a trap. Some lead to growth, to healing, to truth. But the ones that trap are usually the ones we never question, the ones we lock away because they are too painful to revisit, the ones we defend even when they hurt us, because we are scared of what it would mean to admit we could have chosen differently. So what do? How do we live with choices that have narrowed our lives? We begin by naming them, by bringing them into the light, not with shame, not with blame, but with honesty. We ask, is this still serving me, or am I just afraid to let it go? We give ourselves permission to revisit the fork in the road, not to erase the past, but to choose again. To remember that freedom is not in never making a mistake. It is in knowing we can choose differently even after years of moving in one direction, because the most powerful act is not the first choice. It is the second, the one you make after learning, after falling, after realizing you built your life around a single decision that no longer fits. That is when you find out if you are still free. Now close your eyes. Think of one choice that has shaped your life, one that you rarely question. Ask yourself, did I choose this, or did I just stop choosing after the first time? The perfect world that demands a sacrifice. Imagine stepping into a world where everything works exactly as it should. The streets are clean, the people are kind, the systems are fair. There is no hunger, no war, no pain that is not already being healed. A perfect world, calm, beautiful, balanced. You feel the peace as soon as you arrive. You feel the order. You feel the silence that comes not from emptiness, but from harmony. This is the world that everyone dreams about, the kind of world that leaders promise, the kind of world that poets write about. But then you notice something else, something subtle, something unsettling. This perfect world has a rule. A quiet rule, a rule that everyone knows but no one talks about. This world demands a sacrifice. At first, you do not see it. You think maybe it is just discipline, maybe it is just maturity. But then you start to feel it in the faces of people. Their eyes are soft, but not free. Their words are kind, but cautious. Their smiles last just a moment too long. It is like everyone here has agreed to hold something in, to give something up. And they have done it so well that no one remembers exactly what it was, but you can feel it, like a cold wind that passes behind the sun. There is something missing. Perfection always has a cost. And in this world, the cost is sacrifice. But not a dramatic one, not the kind you read about in ancient stories. This is a quiet sacrifice, a personal one, a part of the self that must be left behind to keep the world balanced. Maybe it is your passion. Maybe it is your anger. Maybe it is your uniqueness, something you must release to belong here, something you must bury to stay. This world has no violence because people have learned to keep their rage in small, locked rooms inside their hearts. It has no inequality because everyone has agreed to stay exactly in their lane. no higher, no lower. It has no sorrow because grief is kept behind closed doors, processed privately, never spilled in public. Everyone plays their role. Everyone keeps the balance. Everyone sacrifices something. And you begin to wonder, is it still perfect if it comes at the cost of something so human? Is it still paradise if you cannot cry freely? If you cannot scream? If you cannot love in a way that disrupts the structure? In a perfect world, mistakes cannot be tolerated. Everything must be predictable. Everything must work. So the messy parts of life get trimmed away. But those messy parts are often where joy hides, where creativity begins, where love finds its sharpest meaning. Without chaos, there is no contrast. Without darkness, light becomes flat. And without the freedom to break something, there is no real freedom at all. Now picture someone who has lived in this perfect world their whole life. They know the rules. They know how to move quietly. They know how to smile on time. But one day, they feel something rise inside them. A feeling that does not belong in this place. A question, a desire, a truth that threatens the balance. They try to ignore it. They try to push it down. But it grows. And soon they realize they have only two choices: stay and sacrifice the truth, or leave and lose the world they know. This is not just a story about utopia. This is a reflection of many real lives. Places where perfection is demanded in subtle ways. Families where emotions are only allowed if they are pleasant. Workplaces where you are expected to be strong, focused, emotionless. Relationships where love is only given if you follow the unspoken rules. These are many perfect worlds, and they ask for sacrifices too. Some people give up their voice, others give up their dreams. Some give up their identity, and they do it to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to stay in a world that feels safe, but inside, something fades. The colors of life become muted. The music becomes softer. They forget how it feels to be wild, to be uncertain, to be real. The perfect world can be a cage with golden bars. You do not see them at first, because everything looks beautiful, but soon you feel the space shrinking. You feel your breath shorten, and you start to ask, what did I give up to be here? And yet, the world outside the perfect one is chaotic, messy, painful. So leaving is not easy. It is a trade, a choice between comfort and truth, between order and freedom, between peace and possibility. There is no simple answer. Some people choose to stay, and they learn to find small rebellions in quiet moments. Others leave, and they carry the scars of what they lost, but also the fire of what they found. You must ask yourself, what kind of life do you want? Do you want a life where everything is safe, predictable, structured, but you must always hold a part of yourself back? Or do you want a life that is wild, uncertain, but fully yours? Because the perfect world will always ask for something, not as punishment, but as payment. It will ask you to sacrifice your chaos, your questions, your edges, and in return, it will give you calm. It will give you belonging. It will give you order, but only if you stay inside the lines. The question is, what are you willing to lose in exchange for peace? And what are you willing to risk in order to feel fully alive? Maybe there is a middle path, a way to keep your fire without burning down the world around you, a way to bring some of the chaos into the perfect world, to make it a little more human, a little more real. Because no world is truly perfect unless it has space for everything: the beauty, the sorrow, the anger, the love, the confusion, the truth. And maybe you are the one meant to carry that truth into the silence, not to break the world, but to remind it what it forgot, that perfection without soul is just a mask, that peace without truth is just quiet fear, and that a real world, a living world, must have room for the whole human heart, even the parts that do not fit, the thought that ends free will, Imagine sitting alone in a quiet room. You look around. No one is watching. No one is telling you what to do. You could stand up, stretch, walk away, or just stay seated. You feel like you are in control. You feel like the next thing you do will be your choice. But then, a single question enters your mind. What if I am not the one choosing? What if every move I make is only the next step in a path I did not build? What if I am only following a script I cannot see? And once that question arrives, it changes everything. Because now, even your decision to ignore the question feels like something that was already decided for you. This is the thought that ends free will. It begins as curiosity, a quiet wonder about how choices happen. You think back on something you just did. Maybe you picked up your phone. Why? Did you really choose to? Or did a flicker of boredom pull you? Did your body act before your mind noticed? It feels like a small moment, but it opens a door. You begin to question other actions. Why did I speak just now? Why did I say those exact words? Why did I feel drawn to that person or avoid that place? And the more you look, the more you see something strange. Your choices are always surrounded by reasons, desires, fears, habits, patterns. And none of them feel like things you picked freely. They just appeared. You did not choose your childhood. You did not choose your memories. You did not choose the people who shaped you, the stories you were told, the reactions you learned to have. All of these things guide what you want and what you avoid. They shape your likes and dislikes. They filter how you see the world. And if they were all given to you before you had any say, then what part of you is truly choosing now? This thought can be terrifying, because we want to believe we are the authors of our own lives, that we are not just reacting, but directing, that we have power, not just momentum. But if everything that leads to a decision was placed inside you without your permission, then how free is that decision really? Some try to solve this by saying free will is not about the source of your thoughts, but your ability to act on them, that even if your thoughts are shaped by the past, you can still choose which ones to follow. But then another thought arrives. If the thought that makes you act is also shaped by forces outside of you, is that still freedom? If one impulse beats another in your mind, but both were created by your environment, your biology, or your experiences, who exactly is choosing between them? You can try to step back and say, I will choose to choose, but even that choice has a reason, a cause, a motive. It is turtles all the way down, each decision resting on another you did not create. And suddenly, your sense of control begins to fade. This does not mean you become passive. You still act, you still think, you still respond, but you can no longer say, with full confidence, that you are the source of those actions. It feels like you are the rider of a horse, but the horse is the one deciding where to go. And the rider convinces himself he chose the direction. So what does this mean for how we live? Does it make everything pointless, or can it make things clearer? If you truly understand that free will might be an illusion, something strange happens. You stop blaming yourself in the same way. You stop blaming others as harshly. You see that people are not always the authors of their actions. That much of what they do is shaped by pain, by fear, by misunderstanding. And maybe so is what you do. You begin to shift from judgment to understanding, from punishment to patience, from pride to humility. You still feel pain when others hurt you. You still take responsibility when you hurt others. But now, you hold it differently, less as a moral failure, more as a ripple in a long chain of causes, and this can be freeing in its own way. Because if you are not fully in control of your thoughts, you can stop believing every dark idea in your head must reflect who you are. You can watch thoughts rise and fall without identifying with them. You can begin to observe the mind rather than being trapped inside it. Some people fear this will make them lazy or detached, that if they believe free will is an illusion, they will stop caring. But often, the opposite happens. When you let go of the need to control everything, you soften, you accept, you adapt. You stop trying to force your mind to be a certain way and start learning how to live with it. And yet, even after all this, something inside you might still insist that you are choosing, that you are not a machine, that there is a spark inside you that no science can explain. Maybe that is part of the illusion too, or maybe it is something real, something we have not fully understood yet. But whether or not free will is real, the thought that ends it cannot be unseen. Once you have questioned your choices deeply enough, you realize how fragile the idea of control really is. And in that realization, there is both discomfort and clarity. You are a pattern in motion, a story unfolding, a system reacting to itself and to the world. And yet, you are also the witness of that system. You are the place where the loop is seen. Maybe that is where freedom lives, not in the ability to choose from perfect neutrality, but in the ability to be aware, to watch the river of thought without always jumping in. That awareness may not stop the current, but it lets you float rather than drown. It lets you see the machinery of the mind without being trapped inside it. It lets you feel a deeper kind of peace, not the peace of control, but the peace of understanding. You may never escape the loop of cause and effect, but you can wake up inside it, and that might be the closest thing to freedom we can know. And that's it. Hope you're in peace. Just consider subscribing, because sleep matters. Just then, stress scatters, and nothing else matters, right? Peace out.